Chapter 1751. Ji Bai had never lied, especially to Ji Tianqing. This was his nature. He would rather not open his mouth and not speak nonsense. After a long silence, he cupped his hands towards Ji Tianqing and explained, "Reporting to Master, Xueqi did not intend to hide anything, I just did not want you to worry." "Of course I understand." Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a deep voice, "I just want to know what happened." Ji Bai thought for a moment and replied, "Master's guess is correct, we have indeed encountered trouble, and the other party is indeed a demon. After all, Tianzhu Mountain is in the north of Xueqi Kingdom, adjacent to the three divine kingdoms and Dark North Mountain. The demons of Dark North Mountain are different from before. They are no longer low-key and have become unusually active recently." Granny Long had already revealed similar information before, so Ji Tianqing had already understood the situation. Hearing Ji Bai's answer, he was not surprised and continued to ask, "Did you two have a conflict with the demons, or did the demons take action against Tianzhu Mountain?" Ji Bai and Xueqi were startled for a moment, and their eyes flashed with a strange light. Obviously, the two of them did not expect Ji Tianqing's intuition to be so sharp that he could see through the details with a single glance. Xueqi quickly explained, "Master, please do not worry about this matter. Tianzhu Mountain can handle it." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said with a solemn expression, "So, I guessed right, the demons really did make a move against Tianzhu Mountain?" Ji Bai added, "It's just a small-scale harassment, Master does not need to take it to heart." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and did not say anything. Even if Tianzhu Mountain was attacked by the demons, he could not help now. His top priority was to rush to Blazing Mountain as soon as possible to gather materials to repair the divine sword. After a moment of silence he said in a deep voice, "Ever since the ancestral devil god came to Xueqi continent, the demons of Dark North Mountain have a leader and have become even more rampant. Dark North Mountain has been dormant for tens of thousands of years, and they are strong enough to wait for their ancestral devil god to appear. Looking at the current situation, the demons' ambition is difficult to contain, and I am afraid that they will bring chaos to the world. However, with our current situation, it is not suitable for us to confront the demons head-on." Ji Bai and Xueqi both nodded in agreement. "Master is wise." The Great Immortal said the same thing. "Great Immortal, you've always reminded us that we've waited for 1,000 years, and we've endured it. Now that Master has appeared, all the more we can't be anxious. We must be even more calm and careful." Ji Tianqing nodded and ordered, "Ji Bai, Xueqi, you two go into the sword world first and focus on recuperating. I have important matters to attend to and will be leaving the Luotian Mountain in a few days to head to the ruins of gods. I'll call you out when I need you." Ji Bai and Xueqi cupped their hands in salute at the same time. Then, Ji Tianqing took out the Sword of Burial of Heaven, opened the entrance to the sword world, and put the two of them inside. Not long after, Yun Yao also finished her cultivation and walked out of the secret room. After 2 days of rest and recuperation, her mental state and magic power had reached their peak, and her martial arts realm had also been consolidated. She instructed Black Eagle and Golden Dragon before following Ji Tianqing out of the Cloud Water Palace. After the two of them left the Luotian Mountain, Ji Tianqing summoned Black Dragon and rode it towards the ruins of gods. Ever since Black Dragon swallowed the divine dragon crystal, it had been cultivating in seclusion for the past few months. Its strength had increased rapidly, and its body had also undergone some changes. Now, it had reached the 7th level of the Essence Soul realm, and its body was more than 2,000 feet long. However, this was only the initial results, and definitely not the final effect of the divine dragon crystal. The true effect of the divine dragon crystal had yet to be unleashed. Black Dragon still needed a few decades to completely absorb the power of the divine dragon crystal. Unknowingly, a month passed. Black Dragon carried Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao and flew across the sky at lightning speed, advancing towards the northwest. In the first half of the month, Black Dragon traveled through the Luo Shui divine nation. Everything was peaceful, and they didn't encounter any dangers. However, in the next half a month, the group entered the Heaven Extinction Divine Kingdom's territory. This region was the most desolate territory in the Heaven Extinction Divine Kingdom. It was close to the ruins of gods and North Underworld Mountain, so the environment was dangerous. As Black Dragon traveled, it often encountered danger. For example, there were attacks from powerful fey beasts, as well as groups of adventurer teams attacking it. The fey beasts that lurked in the mountains and rivers were powerful fey beasts at the Tribulation Transcendence realm as long as they could occupy an area and declare themselves overlords. When they sensed Black Dragon's aura, they were like hungry wolves that had seen a lamb. They only wanted to pounce on it and devour it clean. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao could easily deal with these Tribulation Transcendence realm fey beasts. They could either kill them or repel them. What troubled Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao the most were the adventurer teams that licked blood and committed all sorts of evil. These adventurer teams were formed by warriors at the Essence Soul realm and above. There were at most dozens of them and at least a dozen. The leaders of these adventurer teams were often at the Tribulation Transcendence realm. To put it nicely, these people were called adventurer teams. With rich experience and strength, they explored all kinds of ruins and forbidden areas. In fact, they were a group of desperados who committed all sorts of crimes. In order to plunder resources and wealth, they did not hesitate to rob, kill, and commit arson. On the way to the ruins of gods, Black Dragon encountered two adventurer teams one after another. Without exception, when the two adventurer teams saw Black Dragon and found that there were only Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao on its back, they both had evil intentions. In the world of martial arts, divine dragons were unattainable. Only the three martial gods could control them. Flood dragons were more numerous and more common. They were the mounts and pet beasts that countless experts dreamed of. When the warriors of the two adventurer teams saw the legendary Black Dragon, of course, they pounced on it without caring about their own safety, trying to take it for themselves. In order to achieve their goal, the two adventurer teams were unscrupulous. Traps, ambushes, poisons, assassinations, and sieges. They took turns to use all sorts of methods just to kill Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao and snatch Black Dragon. However, there was no doubt about the outcome. The first adventurer team had fewer people, only about a dozen warriors. They were basically at the Essence Soul realm, and their leader was at the First Firmament Tribulation Transcendence realm. When dealing with this adventurer team, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao used lightning-fast methods to kill more than a dozen people. The remaining adventurers were scared out of their wits as they fled. As for the second adventurer team, they had more people. There were more than 30 of them, and all of them were elites at the Fourth Firmament Essence Soul realm and above. The leader and the strategist were experts at the Second and Third Firmament Tribulation Transcendence realm. The members of this adventurer team knew how to divide the work and work together. They each had their own duties, and their methods were cunning and changeable. They were very difficult to deal with. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao tangled with this adventurer team for 9 days and 9 nights, traversing 500,000 kilometers. Both sides fought with wits and courage, using all sorts of methods and mystic techniques. Finally, the outcome was decided. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were safe and sound, but Black Dragon was slightly injured. Chapter 1752. More than 40 days later, the Black Dragon left the Heaven's divine nation and entered the ruins of God. The vast and boundless ruins of God was covered with desolate grayish-brown mountain ranges that crisscrossed. The sky was filled with gray clouds and gloomy. The ground was also filled with a withered aura. Once one entered the ruins of God, one would feel depressed and their mood would become even more depressed. After what happened before, the Black Dragon already had experience. Even without Ji Tianqing's reminder, it knew that the ruins of God was extremely dangerous, so it became even more cautious. That evening, the Black Dragon was flying in the dark sky. Ji Tianqing sat on the back of the dragon, holding a map in his hand as he carefully examined it. According to the map, the blazing mountain was in the depths of the ruins of God, more than 2 million miles away from him. With the Black Dragon's flying speed, it would take about half a month to reach. Yun Yao sat beside Ji Tianqing, silently meditating. In the past month or so, her strength had been consolidated and her fighting strength had increased by a lot. After Ji Tianqing kept the map, she also finished her meditation and opened her eyes. She turned her head to look at Ji Tianqing beside her and asked, "Tianqing, how long until we reach the blazing mountain?" Ji Tianqing replied, "If nothing unexpected happens, half a month is enough." Yun Yao nodded and asked again, "Tianqing, we have already left the Luotian mountain for more than 40 days. Logically speaking, you should be about to undergo your tribulation, right?" Ji Tianqing revealed a trace of a smile and said playfully, "That's right. These few days, I often feel that the heavens are sending me a message. My heavenly tribulation will descend in about half a month." Yun Yao frowned and said worriedly, "At that time, wouldn't we be in the blazing mountain?" She thought for a moment and said with a solemn expression, "Tianqing, the blazing mountain is extremely dangerous and is not suitable for you to undergo your tribulation. Accidents will definitely happen. In my opinion, we should find a hidden place so that no one will disturb you when you undergo your tribulation." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "I understand. You don't have to worry. Let's get to the Mountain of Flames first." Seeing that he had a card up his sleeve, Yun Yao felt much more at ease. Soon, half a month had passed. That afternoon, the Black Dragon carried Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao and was about to arrive at the Flaming Mountain. While they were still several hundred miles away, the two of them could already see from high up in the sky that a sea of flames had appeared in the desolate mountain range ahead. It was an area shrouded in scarlet flames. There were several towering mountain ranges, all of which were emitting scarlet light and surrounded by fierce flames. Even from hundreds of miles away, Ji Tianqing could clearly feel the terrifyingly high temperature of the flames. The air was filled with a scorching hot aura, and even traces of dark red fire could be vaguely seen. As expected of the Mountain of Flames, everything within a few hundred miles is a forbidden zone. Warriors below the primordial soul realm are unable to stay here. Ji Tianqing sighed as he looked at the flaming mountain in front of him. Yun Yao stood side by side with him on the dragon's back. She looked around with a deep gaze and observed the situation. "Tianqing, this place has already become a place of trouble. I'm afraid there are several groups of people lurking within 1,000 miles. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said with a playful smile, "It seems that the news of the appearance of the glazed fire dragon has spread. That's why it has attracted the attention of various experts." He released his divine sense and extended it in all directions, carefully inspecting the sky and the earth. Soon, he discovered that there were indeed traces left behind by martial experts within a few dozen miles of the surrounding area. Yun Yao reminded him again, "Tianqing, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, you'd better put away the black dragon." Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. "It's too eye-catching for us to come on the black dragon. It's probably already attracted the attention of some experts." As he spoke, he took out the Sword of Burial of Heaven and put the black dragon into the sword world. At the same time, he summoned Ji Bai and Xueqi and asked them to follow him secretly. After they were ready, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao flew across the sky and rushed towards the flaming mountain. As the two of them quickly approached the flaming mountain, there were several pairs of eyes spying on them in the mountains and rivers within a radius of hundreds of miles. 15 minutes later, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao arrived near the flaming mountain. The closer they got to the flaming mountain, the thinner the air between heaven and earth, and the more terrifying the temperature became. The two of them stood 50 miles away from the flaming mountain. They stopped in the sky and observed the flaming mountain at a close distance. They saw a few towering mountain ranges that were thousands of feet tall between the mountains. Those mountain ranges crisscrossed and stretched for tens of thousands of miles. They couldn't see the end at a glance. The towering mountain ranges that were thousands of feet tall were very steep and almost straight. The surrounding mountain ranges were grayish-brown and covered with weathered rocks. However, the flaming mountain was different. The mountain was dark red and revealed a faint golden color. The mountain had been burned by the glass heavenly fire. After tens of thousands of years, the impurities had long been removed and it had become as smooth and shiny as a glazed tile. In addition, the mountain contained rich mineral resources. All kinds of mineral veins and gems had been burned and tempered by the glass heavenly fire, which was why they had a faint golden color. Ji Tianqing had no doubt that even a few stones dug out from the flaming mountain were valuable treasures to ordinary cultivators. While he and Yun Yao were observing the flaming mountain, the terrifying high temperature roasted them. There were even wisps of flames floating in the sky that kept flying towards them. Every flame was as thin as a strand of hair, but it contained a sharp and violent aura. He and Yun Yao could only use their dermic powers to form a thin shield on the surface of their bodies to resist the corrosion of the flames and high temperature. At this moment, two figures flew over from afar and headed straight for the flaming mountain. They were two powerhouses, one old and one young. The old man had white hair and a beard, and he wore a purple robe. He held a golden horsetail whisk in his hand and wore a crown with 3 flowers and 7 stars on his head. He had the aura of an otherworldly expert. Following behind the old man was a young man dressed in black martial arts attire. This person's body was tall and sturdy, and his face and aura were quite strong. His eyes were cold and sharp. He carried a black heavy sword that was as wide as a bench, and his movements carried the aura of wind and thunder. He was obviously a powerhouse in the tribulation transcendence realm. When they passed by Yun Yao and Ji Tianxing, the two of them paused for a moment. The purple-robed old man tilted his head slightly and sized up Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. He said with a serious expression, "Young man, this is not a place for you to come. Leave quickly." Ji Tianxing frowned slightly and said expressionlessly, "What does it have to do with you where we are going? This flaming mountain is not your territory." The purple-robed old man was stunned for a moment, and a sneer flashed across his eyes. He shook his head and did not speak anymore, as if he could not be bothered to lower himself to Ji Tianxing's level. On the other hand, the young man in black was quite dissatisfied with Ji Tianxing's attitude. He shouted coldly, "Kid, be more polite with your words." Chapter 1753. The young man's tone and expression were somewhat overbearing. The purple-robed elder thought even more highly of himself and was too lazy to waste his breath. Ji Tianxing could not help but sneer. He said indifferently, "I'm not familiar with you. I don't need your kind reminder." Hearing this, the purple-robed elder frowned slightly, revealing a hint of displeasure in his eyes. The young man's expression became colder and colder. He glared at Ji Tianxing with a sharp gaze and shouted angrily, "Brat, you really don't know how to appreciate favors. My martial uncle is the famous bright sword martial lord. It is your fortune that he is willing to remind you." Bright sword martial lord? Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows. The young man revealed an arrogant expression. He raised his chin and said, "That's right. Now you know how stupid you are, right? Apologize to my martial uncle immediately. Perhaps my martial uncle will be magnanimous and forgive your ignorant offense." The sneer on Ji Tianxing's face became even more pronounced. He said with a mocking tone, "He, what bright sword martial lord? I've never heard of him. You'd better enjoy this so-called blessing for yourself. As for apologizing, don't even think about it." Brat! The young man was ridiculed and became even angrier. He shouted angrily, "I'll give you one last chance. If you don't apologize, you'll have to bear the consequences." As he spoke, he raised his right hand and grabbed the hilt of the heavy sword, as if he was about to draw his sword. "I'd like to see what kind of ability you have to be so arrogant and overbearing." Ji Tianxing did not budge an inch as he looked at him indifferently. A black light flashed in his right hand and the sword of burial of heaven appeared. Seeing this, the two of them seemed to be at loggerheads and were about to attack at any moment. The young man was already riding a tiger and could not back down. He could not stop because of his face. At this moment, Bright Sword Martial Lord raised his hand and said expressionlessly, "Chen Yu, don't be presumptuous, lest you delay the proper business." The young man named Chen Yu furrowed his brows and said unwillingly, "Martial uncle, but this kid is too arrogant." Honorable Sword Martial Lord said without changing his expression, "Some young people don't know the immensity of heaven and earth, so how can we lower ourselves to their level? Isn't that a disgrace to this monarch status? People who don't know what's good for them will be taught a lesson sooner or later." Chen Yu let go of the sword hilt and withdrew his right hand. He cupped his hands and said, "Martial uncle is right, Chen Yu will remember." Finished speaking, he fiercely glared at Ji Tianxing before following Bright Sword Martial Lord and flying away. The two of them flew across the sky at lightning speed. Soon, they entered the flaming mountain and disappeared. Yun Yao frowned and said in an indifferent tone, "There are always some self-righteous people who take advantage of their seniority and want to teach others. They even think that they have noble character and unquestionable integrity. What a joke." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Yes, there are nosy people everywhere." Finished speaking, he pondered for a moment, then analyzed, although that honorable sword martial lord is annoying, he's still considered a righteous martial artist of the profound sect. The reason why he stopped Chen Yu is probably because he's in a hurry to enter the flaming mountain to deal with some important matter. It's very likely that it's related to the glazed fire dragon. Yun Yao nodded slightly and added, "There's another reason. There are too many people here, and there are also a few groups of experts hiding in the dark. Honorable Sword Martial Lord doesn't want to cause too much trouble. Let's go, let's also enter the flaming mountain to take a look." Ji Tianxing stopped talking about this matter and immediately flew forward. Yun Yao hesitated for a moment, then secretly asked, "Tianxing, are we really going in now? I'm afraid your heavenly tribulation is coming, right?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "It should be in the next 2 days, but I'm not sure which day it will be." Yao Yao, don't worry. Let's enter the flaming mountain and take a look at the situation. It won't be too late to make a decision. As his voice fell, two more groups of martial artists appeared in the sky not far away. One of the groups of martial artists had 3 people, all of whom were Tribulation Realm experts. Leading them was an old woman with a head full of white hair. She held a purple jade dragon-headed walking stick and wore a luxurious robe with astral patterns. Behind her were 2 middle-aged men dressed in armor and wielding swords. They were dressed as guards. It was obvious that the 3 of them came from powerful family clans and had extraordinary heritage. They flew across the sky as fast as lightning and flew straight into the flaming mountain. Their figures were engulfed by the sea of flames. As for the other group of martial artists, there were 9 of them. They were all middle-aged men with powerful auras. The leader was dressed in red robes and carried a saber on his back. His body emitted a domineering and bloody aura. The other 8 people had strength at the 6th or 7th firmament essence soul realm. Their skills and auras were rather elite. This was clearly an adventurer team. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A beam of light flashed as the adventurer team stopped in front of Ji Tianxing. Everyone stared at Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao as they sized them up indifferently. However, everyone only sized up Ji Tianxing before their gazes landed on Yun Yao. They revealed looks of amazement and shock. There were even a few adventurers who had covetous looks in their eyes. However, they quickly concealed it. The leading red-robed man crossed his arms in front of his chest and smiled at Ji Tianxing. He said, "Little brother, I'm the leader of the Wild Thunder Adventurer Team, Lei Kuang. The both of you are so young, yet you dare to explore the ruins of God. Your strength and guts are extraordinary. I admire both of you so." Without waiting for Lei Kuang to finish his sentence, Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, "We are not interested in an adventurer team. If you wish to invite us to join, you don't have to say it." Lei Kuang choked on the second half of his sentence as the smile on his face froze. The few fierce-looking adventurers immediately revealed their anger as they looked sharply at Ji Tianxing. However, Lei Kuang quickly regained his composure and waved his hand at the adventurers behind him. He looked calmly at Ji Tianxing and continued, "Little brother, you are very confident, but do you know where this place is? The famous Flaming Mountain. One of the most dangerous forbidden areas in the ruins of God. Don't blame me for not reminding you. With your strength and adventure experience, do you think you can have designs on the glazed fire dragon? You are definitely courting death." Ji Tianxing glanced at him indifferently and said indifferently, "You don't have to worry about that." Lei Kuang frowned and sighed. "Well, to each his own. I won't force you. When you have thought it through, come and find me. The Wild Thunder Adventurer Team will still accept you." After saying that, Lei Kuang led the 8 adventurers away and flew toward the Flaming Mountain. The adventurers were a little angry and secretly asked, "Leader, why are you so good-tempered today? You even called that kid brother?" "Boss, that kid is so arrogant. Why don't you let us teach him a lesson? That kid doesn't know what's good for him. Boss, why did you give him a chance?" Lei Kuang grinned and revealed a mocking sneer. He said in a sinister tone, "Humph, what do you know? I'm casting a long line to catch a big fish. When that kid enters the Flaming Mountain, his life will no longer be in his hands." Chapter 1754. After the Wild Thunder adventurers left, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao rushed to the Blazing Mountain. During this time, 2 more groups of Tribulation Realm powerhouses emerged from the mountains and flew towards the Blazing Mountain. These powerhouses all had different appearances, and it was obvious that they came from different parts of the Shenwu continent. However, they all had the same goal: the glazed fire dragon in the Blazing Mountain. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao flew towards the Blazing Mountain at a leisurely pace. They were not anxious at all. Both of them knew that whether or not they could obtain the glazed fire dragon had nothing to do with the time they entered the Blazing Mountain. The more impatient a person was, the easier it was for them to make mistakes and suffer losses. Not long after, the 2 arrived at the edge of the Blazing Mountain. The air was filled with scorching heat, and layers of scarlet flames with hints of gold rushed towards them like huge waves. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao both used their magic power to form an icy blue shield around their bodies to protect themselves. Under the high temperature and the scarlet flames, the icy blue shield continuously evaporated into a hazy mist, and its defensive power was constantly being weakened. The 2 of them needed to continuously provide magic power to maintain the shield's integrity and operation. In other words, once the 2 of them stepped into the Blazing Mountain, they would continuously consume their magic power. If they did not leave the range of the blazing mountain before their magic power ran out, their lives would be in danger. Yun Yao stared at the blazing mountain in front of her and said solemnly, "Tianqing, we saw it with our own eyes. Several groups of powerhouses have already entered the blazing mountain. There must be a large number of powerhouses gathered in the blazing mountain now. We need to be careful and not let our guard down." Tianqing nodded. I understand. The scarlet flames in the periphery of the blazing mountain are not too strong, and the temperature is not too high either. Even a primordial spirit realm powerhouse can last for half a day. Don't use the water reversal sword for now. It's our greatest trump card, and we can only use it at a critical moment. Yun Yao naturally understood what he meant and nodded. The two of them then stepped into the scarlet sea of flames and entered the blazing mountain. As soon as they entered the range of the blazing mountain, the two of them were engulfed by the sea of flames, and the surrounding temperature doubled. Violent waves of fire continued to attack, blocking the two of them from advancing. There were also countless wisps of flames that shot out like a rain of arrows, constantly bombarding the two's mana shields. The two of them were in the flaming mountain, and their flying speed was reduced by 40%. As they flew deeper into the mountain range, the two of them lowered their heads and observed their surroundings. Beneath his feet was a towering mountain range that was thousands of feet tall. The mountain was crimson in color and emitted a faint golden light. The mountains and the earth had been scorched for tens of thousands of years, turning into a translucent glaze that contained rich metallic minerals. Tianqing released his divine sense and immediately discovered that there were large amounts of metal ores hidden inside the mountain. However, the temperature inside the mountain was even more terrifying. It was also quite difficult to enter the mountain to mine the ores. The fiery mountain covered an area of 1 million miles, and was formed by dozens of magnificent mountain ranges. The terrain was quite complicated. The two of them identified a direction and flew straight into the depths of the mountain range. About an hour later, the two of them had flown a few thousand miles away. At that moment, Tianqing suddenly discovered a group of Essence Soul Realm warriors in the mountain range to his left. They were digging for ores in the mountain. It was a group of adventurers. There were a total of 12 of them, and their leader had the strength of a first firmament tribulation transcendence cultivator. The strength of the 11 adventurers was at the 6th firmament essence soul realm and above. The group of adventurers had excavated a small passageway in the rock wall halfway up the mountain that led straight into the interior of the mountain. 2 adventurers stayed behind to guard the passageway while the rest entered the belly of the mountain. They quickly excavated the ores and plundered the various gems and ores. Tianqing probed and discovered that there were 7 ores of different sizes hidden in the mountain. The ores that the group of adventurers had excavated were the largest fire spirit gold ore, and also the most valuable one. The adventurers were very skilled and appeared to be very experienced. It was obvious at a glance that they often did such things. Tianqing only observed for about 100 seconds before the group of adventurers dug up more than 1,000 ores. They were even lucky enough to dig up 3 fire spirit gold crystals. When Yun Yao noticed that he was observing the others excavating, she asked with a voice transmission, "Tianqing, what materials do you lack to repair the divine sword?" Tianqing answered calmly, "I'm still lacking 2 materials. Wind lightning meteorite iron and golden crow copper marrow." Yun Yao frowned and thought for a moment before persuading, "Those 2 materials are top refinement materials. They are extremely rare. I wonder if the fiery mountain has them? Let's hope so." Tianqing smiled as he consoled himself. At that moment, the 2 adventurers guarding the passageway's entrance sensed the existence of Tianqing and Yun Yao. Seeing that the duo had stayed near the mountain for a long time without any intention of leaving, the 2 adventurers raised their guard and revealed a strong sense of hostility. Tianqing could not be bothered with the 2 adventurers. He did not want to waste time here either. He was about to leave with Yun Yao. But at that moment, more than a dozen fire demons that were 100 feet tall and had ferocious appearances suddenly emerged from the mountain's interior. Every fire demon had the strength of a 7th or 8th firmament essence soul. They exuded a violent and evil aura. Their sudden appearance alarmed the 10 adventurers. They stopped excavating the ores and charged at the fire demons with their swords and sabers. The 2 parties began fighting in the mountain. Their battle produced loud rumbling sounds that shook the heavens and earth. The powerful aftershocks of the battle struck the mountain wantonly. They erupted from the passageway, forming a huge 5-colored pillar of light that shot into the sky. What surprised Ji Tianqing was that the mountain was abnormally sturdy. It was like a Dharma treasure that had been tempered thousands of times. More than a dozen adventurers and more than a dozen fire demons exchanged dozens of blows in the belly of the mountain. The mountain shook incessantly, but it did not collapse. About 30 seconds later, the adventurer team suffered heavy casualties. 4 people died on the spot, and 6 were severely injured. Only the first Firmament Tribulation Transcendence adventurer team leader was able to withstand the fire demon's attacks and was not injured. He led the 6 surviving adventurers and rushed out of the passageway as fast as lightning. They flew out without looking back. 9 fire demons chased after them. They roared as they flew across the sky and began their pursuit of the adventurer team. In just a few seconds, the adventurers and the fire demons disappeared in the crimson sea of fire. Upon seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao exchanged glances. Their eyes turned solemn. This is only the periphery of the flaming mountain. There are so many fiendish demons lurking in the mountain. If we enter the depths of the flaming mountain, we will probably encounter even more powerful fiendish demons. It's no wonder those adventurers are all desperados. They walk the line between life and death all day long. They are probably used to it. That's why they treat life so lightly. Chapter 1755. In the next 6 hours, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao flew more than 15,000 kilometers. Along the way, the 2 of them encountered another group of adventurers. The difference was that there were fewer adventurers in this group. There were only 4 of them. The 4 adventurers were all young men and women. Their attire was rather special and memorable. There was a red-haired man who was as strong as an iron tower, a weak young master in a white robe, a hot woman in a leather coat, and a woman in a long dress with a zither on her back. The 4 of them had reached the second stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm and had mastered powerful secret techniques. They cooperated very well. When Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao encountered them, the 4 of them were surrounded by more than 20 lava giants. The lava giants hid deep underground. They usually hid in the lava and lived by devouring mineral veins and spiritual fire. They were very tall and burly. Their bodies seemed to be made of rock and metal. Their bodies contained a violent power that could destroy the world. The 4 young adventurers used all their strength and various secret techniques to barely block the lava giants' attacks. However, it was very difficult for them to kill those lava giants. It was almost impossible for them to escape the encirclement. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao observed for a while and realized that the 4 adventurers did not look like ordinary adventurers. They were more like genius disciples of some large factions. Therefore, Ji Tianqing decided to save them after weighing the pros and cons for a while. He and Yun Yao worked together, each using a powerful secret skill. With a thunderous momentum, they instantly killed the 4 lava giants. A gap was immediately torn open in the lava giants' encirclement. With their help, the 4 young geniuses desperately broke out of the encirclement and killed a few lava giants together. Only then did they manage to escape. The group did not continue to fight. After breaking out of the encirclement, they left and escaped. Those lava giants had violent power and strong defense, but speed was their weakness. In just 100 breaths of time, the group shook off the dozen lava giants that were chasing after them. The group fled to a 10,000 feet tall glazed mountain and temporarily stopped to rest. Only now did the 4 young experts relax as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. They quickly bowed to Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao and thanked them sincerely. The white-robed young man, who was the leader of the group, even took out 2 superior-grade tribulation pills and gave them to Ji Tianqing as a thank-you gift. Ji Tianqing chatted with the other party for a while before he understood the situation of this adventurer team. It turned out that these 4 young geniuses were all from the Heaven End Divine Nation, and they were the elite experts of the Heaven Shattering Alliance. It was Ji Tianqing's first time hearing about the Broken Heaven Alliance. After asking the white-robed young master, he found out that the Broken Sky Alliance was not under the jurisdiction of any empire. It was an alliance formed by martial Dao experts. At the same time, the Broken Sky Alliance was one of the top 10 martial arts organizations on the Divine Martial Continent. As long as one was a cultivator above the primordial spirit realm, abiding by the rules of the Heaven Shattering Alliance and acknowledging its ideals, they could apply to join. The Broken Heaven Alliance had over 100,000 members, and they were spread all over the Heaven End Divine Nation. No matter which divine nation, race or force they were from, as long as they met the requirements, they could join the Broken Sky Alliance. The Broken Sky Alliance treated all members equally, rewarding them based on their contributions and assigning them positions based on their strength and contributions. These 4 young experts were all geniuses with outstanding talent and ambition. Of course, although they looked young, they had actually lived for 200 to 300 years. They wanted to make a name for themselves, so they formed an adventurer team and came to the Flaming Mountain to search for the Golden Lotus of Fire. Every Golden Lotus of Fire was a rare treasure that was hard to come by in 100 years, and they were the best of the best among spirit herbs. If they could find 2 or more Golden Lotuses of Fire, the 4 of them would accumulate a lot of contributions and qualify to run for the position of deacon. After they entered the Flaming Mountain, they tried their best to sneak into the depths of the ground. Unfortunately, they had just entered the underground lava lake, and before they could find the Golden Lotus of Fire, they alerted the lava giant hiding in the lava lake. Of course, what happened next was self-explanatory. After the white-robed young master finished telling the story, a smile of relief appeared on his fair and handsome face. He cupped his fists at Ji Tianqing and said, "Today, if it weren't for the 2 of you, we would have died here. The 4 of us will remember the kindness of our 2 benefactors in our hearts. In the future, if you need anything, please come to the Broken Sky Alliance to find us. I am Li Gan, this is Zhao Guangxiong, and that is junior sister Qing Wan." The white-robed young master Li Gan introduced his companions to Ji Tianqing. His words and actions were quite graceful. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said calmly, "Young Master Li, you don't need to say any more words of thanks. We still have important matters to attend to, so we will take our leave." Seeing that he was about to leave, Li Gan hurriedly raised his hand and said, "Benefactor, please wait. If I'm not wrong, the 2 of you are going to the depths of the Flaming Mountain to search for the whereabouts of the glazed fire dragon." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and did not comment. Seeing that he did not answer, Li Gan knew what was going on. He cupped his fists and said, "Benefactor, I have to remind you that if you want to snatch the glazed fire dragon, you should give up the idea as soon as possible. I'm not being rude, but the glazed fire dragon is a divine beast and must have reached the martial sage realm. If you go near it rashly, your life will be in danger. Moreover, in the past half a month, dozens of experts have entered the depths of the Flaming Mountain. Those experts came from all over the continent and they were all at least at the 3rd stage of the crossing tribulation realm. Many of them were famous martial lords. With so many experts trying to snatch the glazed fire dragon, I'm afraid the chances are slim. It's better for you not to take the risk." The woman named Qing Wan carried a zither on her back and wore a long dress. She also walked to Li Gan's side and said sincerely, "Benefactors, I just received news yesterday that hundreds of experts have gathered in the depths of the Flaming Mountain. The glazed fire dragon has been forced to appear several times and every time, it would start a massacre and create a bloody storm. It is said that dozens of crossing tribulation realm experts have been killed." Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao could tell that Li Gan and Qing Wan were speaking from the bottom of their hearts. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, "Thank you, young Master Li and Miss Qing Wan, for your reminder. We know what to do. Goodbye." After that, he and Yun Yao cupped their hands and bowed to the crowd and turned to leave. Li Gan, Qing Wan, and the others could not persuade Ji Tianqing anymore. They could only stand there and watch as Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao left. After the 2 disappeared into the sea of fire, Li Gan and the others retracted their gazes and began to discuss with complicated expressions. Those 2 benefactors are the real young geniuses. As expected, geniuses are proud and arrogant. That young Master Ji has not reached the crossing tribulation realm yet, but his combat strength is stronger than ours. It's incredible. He's a rare genius. In my opinion, those 2 benefactors have a lot of feelings for each other. They're probably a couple. They're a perfect match and both are so outstanding. I'm so envious." Chapter 1756. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had already left. They didn't know that Li Gan, Qing Wan, and the others thought highly of them. At the same time, everyone was worried about them. About 12 hours later, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao flew for 70,000 miles and finally left the outer region of the Mountain of Flames. When they entered the central region, they could clearly feel that the flames between heaven and earth were more violent, and the temperature had almost doubled. In order to maintain the dermic power shield, their dermic powers were consumed at a much faster rate. However, at this moment, Ji Tianqing suddenly stopped flying and landed on a mountain peak that was completely golden in color. Yun Yao followed and asked with concern, "Tianqing? What's wrong? Do you need to stop and rest for a while?" Ji Tianqing shook his head and said with a smile, "Not really. I think I'm about to find what I'm looking for. Yun Yao was stunned for a moment, and then a look of surprise appeared on her face. She asked, "You mean the material to repair the divine sword?" "That's right." Ji Tianxing nodded and pointed at the mountain under his feet. He said, "Just now I used my divine sense to check carefully on the way here. Almost every mountain contains a large amount of metal, and there are some ore veins buried underground. Although many of the ore veins are rare and can be mined with valuable ores, I don't want to waste time. I just checked that there are 3 ore veins hidden in the mountain under our feet, and one of them is the Golden Crow Copper Oregon." Yun Yao immediately understood what he meant. Golden Crow Copper ore is rare to begin with. Any piece of ore with high purity can be sold for a sky-high price of 100,000 spirit stones. However, the conditions for the formation of Golden Crow Copper ore are very special, and it grows very slowly. Even a vein that has been growing for thousands of years may only be 1,000 feet long. Only a Golden Crow Copper ore that has been growing for tens of thousands of years can give birth to a piece of Golden Crow Copper marrow. Ji Tianxing revealed a faint smile and nodded. Absolutely correct. I just checked. The Golden Crow Copper ore in this mountain seems to be more than 10,000 feet long. 3,000 zhang long. Yun Yao blinked her beautiful eyes, revealing an expectant look. It must be an ore vein that has been growing for more than 10,000 years. It has a chance to produce Gold Crow Copper marrow. Let's go in and take a look, Ji Tianxing said as he drew the Sword of Burial of Heaven with his right hand. Seeing that there was no one around, he flew to the mountainside with Yun Yao. Then, he found a mountain wall that was closest to the mine and stabbed out a few sword lights with his sword. Pang pang pang. 4 dazzling golden sword lights pierced into the faint golden mountain wall. Suddenly, a large hole was pierced through the glass-like mountain wall. The opening was about 20 feet wide and more than 20 feet deep. The 2 of them entered the deep cave, Ji Tianxing leading the way with his sword in hand. He used his sword skill 3 more times and dug a hole 1,000 feet deep before he entered the belly of the mountain. The belly of the mountain was hollow and filled with caves of various sizes. They were all naturally formed. The Gold Crow Copper ore that Ji Tianxing was looking for was in a huge cave that was 3,000 feet wide. The ground, ceiling, and surrounding walls of the cave were all dark red with a metallic luster. The air was extremely hot. The cave was filled with raging waves of fire that were enough to melt immortal soul-level Dharma treasures. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were inside the cave. They had no choice but to channel more magic power to maintain the operation of the shield and resist the burning of the spirit fire. The cave was filled with jagged rocks of strange shapes. The ground was covered with mounds, piles of rocks, and holes. Rows of faint golden stalactites hung upside down from the ceiling of the cave, like a forest of spears. A dark gold ore vein that was more than 3,000 feet long was lying on the ground like a giant dragon. This was the Gold Crow Copper ore that Ji Tianxing was looking for. The ore vein stretched from one end of the cave to the other, passing through the entire cave. They could not see the source of the ore vein, nor could they see the end of the ore vein. They did not know how long it was. Most of the ore vein was buried underground. Only a small part of it was exposed, but it was still 100 feet high. The dark gold ore vein emitted a mysterious and ancient aura. It also had a terrifying temperature that burned people's souls. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao stared at the Gold Crow Copper ore and used their divine senses to examine it carefully. From the situation of this ore vein, it should be more than 10,000 years old. It has been purified by the glass heavenly fire. I just don't know if the ore vein has produced Gold Crow Copper marrow? Yun Yao thought for a moment and said, Tianxing, let's search separately. It will save more time. You go north, and I'll go south. Ji Tianxing nodded in agreement. They searched north along the ore vein from the middle of the cave. Yun Yao and he had their backs facing each other. They searched south along the ore vein. The cave was silent. The 2 of them were focused on searching. Soon, 15 minutes passed. The 2 of them arrived at the 2 ends of the cave. They were blocked by the rock walls. However, neither of them found the Gold Crow Copper marrow. Ji Tianxing sighed in disappointment. This ore vein is more than 10,000 feet long. More than half of it is buried in the mountain. We can only use a secret technique to drill into the mountain and search. Yun Yao comforted him. Don't be discouraged. This ore vein has been growing for 10,000 years. It is very rare on the continent. It is very likely that it has produced the Gold Crow Copper marrow. Although it is a little troublesome, we have plenty of time. We can take it slow. Then, the two of them continued to search separately. The two of them used a secret technique to drill into the rock layer. They searched north and south along the Gold Crow Copper Oregon. The mountain had been burned by the glass heavenly fire for tens of thousands of years. It was as hard as a high-grade nascent soul Dharma treasure. If the two of them used their divine swords to dig a cave along the ore vein, they would have to go through a lot of trouble. It would be a waste of time and energy. However, the two of them used a secret technique to travel through the mountain. Their speed was very slow. It was about the same as an ordinary person walking. Time passed silently. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. Ji Tianxing traveled 3,000 feet in the mountain. He had already reached the end of the Gold Crow Copper Oregon. However, he still did not find the Gold Crow Copper Marrow. Therefore, he turned back and went through the cave to meet up with Yun Yao. He had just passed through the cave when he received Yun Yao's divine perception voice transmission. Tianxing, come and see. I found it. Yun Yao's tone was joyful and a little excited. Ji Tianxing was stunned. He hurriedly drilled into the mountain and used a secret technique to rush over. When he found Yun Yao, he saw that Yun Yao was guarding a stone hill with a radius of several hundred feet in the rock layer. The Gold Crow Copper ore stopped here. That huge stone hill was obviously the source of the ore vein. Ji Tianxing followed Yun Yao's instructions and released his divine perception into the stone hill. He saw that there was a lump of ore that was half black and half gold deep in the dark golden stone hill. The ore was as big as a head. Its surface was diamond-shaped. It emitted a faint black golden light. It looked very mysterious. The metal and power aura it contained far surpassed the entire hill. Chapter 1757. Just as Yun Yao had expected, the Golden Crow Copper Marrow was indeed nurtured in this mine. Ji Tianxing was filled with joy and excitement. He hurriedly used the Burial of Heaven to break open the dark gold rock. He spent 15 minutes to dig a hole that was more than 100 feet deep and saw the Golden Crow Copper Marrow. However, the Golden Crow Copper Marrow had fused with the ore and was very difficult to separate. He tried a few times, but he could not use the Burial of Heaven to cut it off. After all, the Burial of Heaven was only a supreme-grade essence soul Dharma treasure. It had not even reached the tribulation level. Seeing this, Yun Yao had no choice but to use the Reverse Water Divine Sword and carefully cut the ore. The Reverse Water Divine Sword was a real divine artifact. It was indestructible and unstoppable. After a while, Yun Yao cut out the entire Golden Crow Copper Marrow and handed it to Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing took the Golden Crow Copper Marrow and felt that it was extremely heavy. The muscles in his arms tightened naturally. Although it was only a small piece of ore crystal, it was as heavy as a 1,000-foot mountain. The energy contained in it was extremely powerful and majestic. I thought that the Golden Crow Copper Marrow was extremely precious and that we would have to go through a lot of trouble to get it. I didn't expect that we would get this material in less than a day after entering the Mountain of Flames. Yao Yao, it seems like this is a good sign. It means that our trip will be very successful. Ji Tianxing said with satisfaction as he held the Golden Crow Copper Marrow in his hands and looked at it. Yun Yao also smiled and nodded. I hope everything goes well. Even if we can't get the glazed fire dragon, it would be great if we can gather the materials to repair the divine sword. However, just as she finished speaking, the originally calm rock layer suddenly trembled. Boom! A muffled sound came from the depths of the ground. The two of them frowned and had a bad feeling. What's going on? There seems to be some movement underground. Is there some kind of demon? As he spoke, Ji Tianxing stored the Golden Crow Copper Essence into his spatial ring. He held the Sword of Burial of Heaven in his hand and released his divine sense to explore the situation underground. At this moment, Ji Bai and Xueqi, who were guarding the cave passage, sent out divine sense transmissions almost at the same time. Master, the situation is not good. Quickly retreat. Master, there seems to be a powerful demonic beast underground. Ji Bai and Xueqi had been secretly following and monitoring the situation around them. The two of them would not show themselves unless it was absolutely necessary. Ji Tianxing hurriedly pulled Yun Yao along and used an escape technique to rush out of the mountain. Then, the whole mountain started to shake, and a rumbling sound came from underground. As Ji Tianxing fled, his divine sense also detected that there seemed to be a huge earthquake several thousand feet underground. The incomparably hard rock layer seemed to have been struck by a violent force. All of it protruded upwards, twisting and breaking into pieces. A pitch-black claw that was as large as a house reached out from the messy pile of rocks and easily pushed aside the shattered rock layer. The appearance of the giant claw was somewhat similar to a dragon's claw. Its surface was covered with black scales and had pitch-black sharp nails. A moment later, a second giant claw also reached out from the ground. The mountain shook even more violently, and the caves in the belly of the mountain collapsed one after another. A large and sharp black head emerged from the pile of rubble. It was the head of a giant beast, somewhat like a crocodile's head, but more like a pangolin that had been magnified 10,000 times. On the pitch-black head that was covered in scales, there was a pair of dark green eyes that were suffused with an ice-cold light. Its body wriggled a few times, and then it drilled out of the ground. With a forceful push of its two sturdy front claws, it crushed an vein into pieces. Its entire body emitted an incomparably ferocious aura as it opened its mouth and roared. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing's expression was solemn as he sped up and fled out of the mountain. After a short span of 20 breaths, he and Yun Yao finally left the mountain and returned to the sky shrouded in a sea of fire. However, before the two of them could leave, the golden mountain wall behind them exploded with a bang. Half of the mountain wall had cracked, and countless pieces of rubble collapsed. Two gigantic pitch-black claws drilled out of the mountain peak. Immediately after, the mysterious giant beast that was hundreds of feet long and pitch-black all over also rushed out of the mountain. Swoosh! With a flash of black light, the mysterious giant beast pounced in front of Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing pushed Yun Yao away without hesitation. An incomparably powerful force enveloped Yun Yao and sent her thousands of feet away. At the same time, one of the mysterious giant beast's front claws viciously slapped Ji Tianqing. Bam! Ji Tianqing was sent flying on the spot. His entire body was wrapped in a ball of golden light as he tumbled and crashed into the ground 5 kilometers away. The sudden heavy blow destroyed his dermic power shield and injured his internal organs. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Fortunately, he took out the Kenshin battle robe in time and transformed it into a pair of wings to protect himself. The golden rock wings blocked most of the power, which allowed him to survive. He flew a full 5 kilometers away before he managed to neutralize the impact. He flapped his wings and flew back into the sky. At this moment, the mysterious giant beast pounced in front of Yun Yao again, and opened its mouth to spit out a monstrous golden flame. It was the terrifying heavenly glass fire. Seeing that Yun Yao was about to be engulfed by the heavenly glass fire, Ji Tianqing's pupils constricted, and his heart was in his throat. Yao Yao, be careful. Fortunately, Yun Yao was not flustered in the face of danger. She decisively swung the reverse water divine sword and slashed out 36 icy sword lights. Each sword light was 300 feet long, and the 36 sword lights gathered together to form a mysterious array formation. They formed a gigantic disc and began to spin rapidly. The icy blue disc released an endless amount of icy water and frost energy, which met the golden flames in the sky. Boom, 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 boom. Water and fire were incompatible. The heavenly glass fire and the icy water and frost energy collided, resulting in an earth-shattering explosion. Endless water vapor rose from the sky, but it was quickly evaporated by the sea of flames. The heavenly glass fire that blotted out the sky was also blocked by the icy blue disk and quickly dissipated. Yun Yao successfully blocked the mysterious giant beast's attack with the reverse water divine sword. When the icy blue disk dissipated, Ji Tianqing had already flown to her side. Seeing that she was safe and sound, Ji Tianqing was relieved. The two of them stood side by side and faced off against the mysterious giant beast. The mysterious giant beast occupied the shattered mountain peak and looked down at the two of them from above. Its dark green eyes revealed a bloodthirsty glint. Xueqi, who was hiding in the dark, used his divine sense to send a voice transmission to Ji Tianqing. Master, this mysterious giant beast should be the legendary Xueqi divine armor. In ancient times, the underground armored beast was a mutated species born from the combination of the fire dragon and the black tortoise. This kind of Xueqi divine armor is very rare. It lives in the depths of the Earth's core and feeds on magma, earth fire, and metal veins. It has the power to control the earth and veins. All kinds of historical records clearly recorded that this kind of Xueqi divine armor was worthy of being the overlord of the earth. Chapter 1758. I knew that the golden crow copper marrow wouldn't be so easy to obtain. Ji Tianxing looked at the Xitigarbha divine armor and muttered to himself. Yun Yao held the water reversal divine sword, her body glowing with icy blue light and strong fighting spirit. Tianxing, this giant beast is too strong, and it has devoured many metal veins. Its defense must be very strong. We shouldn't fight it. After we find a chance to shake it off, we should leave this place as soon as possible to avoid more trouble. Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and smiled playfully. He said, this Xitigarbha divine armor is the legendary ruler of the earth. It has the power to control the earth and veins. If we can capture or subdue it and give it to the earth spirit race as their divine beast, it would be a good choice. The earth spirit race had been living in the sword world with peaceful earth city as their foundation and developing. The Xitigarbha divine armor's power and talent were very similar to the earth spirit races. That was why Ji Tianxing had this idea. Subdue this Xitigarbha divine armor? Yun Yao tilted her head to look at him, a look of disbelief in her eyes. Tianxing, we don't even know if we can defeat it, much less subdue it. Ji Tianxing shook his head and said, let's fight it first. As he spoke, he held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed at the Xitigarbha divine armor with a 1,000-foot-long sword light. Sky-shattering sword. The 1,000-foot-long golden sword light contained a wisp of sword intent. Its power and aura had increased. This slash seemed to have the power to tear apart the world as it slashed at the Xitigarbha divine armor's head. A hint of disdain flashed through the Xitigarbha divine armor's dark green eyes. It raised its sturdy left front claw and swatted at the giant golden sword with a claw that was wreathed in raging golden flames. Bang! Golden flames splashed in the sky amidst a deafening sound. The Xitigarbha divine armor was knocked back dozens of feet. The towering mountain beneath it was also on the verge of collapsing. Dense cracks appeared on its surface, and countless pieces of rubble collapsed. The giant golden sword was also smashed to pieces, turning into golden fragments and hurricanes that scattered in all directions. The Xitigarbha divine armor clearly did not expect the power of Ji Tianxing's swordsmanship to be so powerful. It had suffered a loss due to its carelessness, so it immediately became more cautious. It looked at Ji Tianxing with murderous eyes. Roar! The Xitigarbha divine armor roared and opened its wide and flat bloody mouth, spitting out endless glazed heavenly flames that poured down like a flood. Before Ji Tianxing could launch a counterattack, Yun Yao, who had been waiting for a long time, brandished the reverse water divine sword and released a huge ice shield. An icy blue light shield with a radius of 1,000 feet enveloped her and Ji Tianxing, protecting them tightly. The celestial glaze fire that descended from the sky fiercely slammed into the icy blue light barrier, causing a series of muffled sounds to erupt. Bang 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 bang. The icy blue light barrier trembled violently and emitted a dazzling cold light. However, it did not shatter, and not even a crack appeared. No matter how terrifying the celestial glaze fire was blocked by the icy blue light barrier. It could not hurt Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao at all. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Bai and Xueqi, who were hiding in the dark, seized the opportunity and cast a spell to launch an attack. World returned to origin. Sword of all directions. The two of them appeared out of thin air on the left and right sides of the Xitigarbha divine armor. They slashed out a huge sword brilliance that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, slashing the back and ribs of the Xitigarbha divine armor. Another series of muffled bangs rang out, and the Xitigarbha divine armor was forced to retreat. The pitch-black scales on its back and ribs were also slashed by the sword light, causing flames to splatter all over the sky. An incomparably powerful impact force fiercely struck the mountain beneath it. With a series of loud rumbling sounds, the mountain collapsed on the spot and collapsed into pieces. Countless huge rocks piled up into a pile of rubble and ruins, splashing out monstrous red flames and debris. The Xitigarbha divine armor became more and more furious. Its huge body twisted and swung its sturdy tail, smashing it fiercely toward Ji Bai. Ji Bai realized that something was wrong and immediately waved his sword to block. Bang! The giant tail that was more than 20 feet long shattered his defense and sent him flying 10 miles away, smashing into the rubble. The Xitigarbha divine armor still wanted to pounce over and take advantage of the situation to kill Ji Bai. Xueqi had already rushed over without caring about his own safety. He waved his sword and stabbed out hundreds of cold lights, enveloping its head. Ding ding ding. A series of crisp sounds of metal colliding rang out. Sparks continuously burst out from the head of the Xitigaba divine armor. It was dizzy from the sword light. Its attack was blocked, so it frantically waved its claws and fiercely slapped at Xueqi. Xueqi had already retreated 10,000 feet away and dodged its attack. Ji Tianqing rushed over again and waved the Burial of Heaven sword, slashing out a golden sword that flickered with lightning with all his strength. Broken Moon Sword. The sword light that was 1,000 feet long descended from the sky with a divine might of thunder and struck the Xitigaba divine armor. Boom! It was smashed into the rubble on the spot, and a long and narrow white mark appeared on its back. Tens of thousands of purple lightning arcs wrapped around its body, making crackling noises. The scene was in chaos. Lightning flashed and rubble flew everywhere. Ji Tianqing retreated to Yunyao's side and said with a solemn expression, "The shell of this Xitigaba divine armor is terrifyingly powerful. Ordinary methods can't hurt it at all." Yunyao said in a solemn tone, "It has swallowed too many metal veins and has been tempered by the glass heavenly fire. Its defensive power is already comparable to a tribulation-level magic treasure. From the looks of it, only the reverse water sword can break its defense. I'll find an opportunity to kill it." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "All right, I'll create an opportunity." At the same time, the Xitigaba divine armor had just crawled out of the rubble and was roaring at the sky. Ji Tianqing leaped into the sky, holding the Burial of Heaven with both hands and stabbing at it with all his might. Stab! A cold light flashed in the sea of fire. In the next moment, the crack on the back of the Xitigaba divine armor emitted a cold light that blotted out the sky like a mushroom cloud. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion resounded for hundreds of miles. The Xitigaba divine armor was sent flying by the explosion. A bloody hole appeared on its back, and countless fragments splashed out. A stream of black-red blood spurted out. Before it could crawl out, Ji Tianqing descended from the sky and released a secret technique. Lightning! The third Dharma eye on his forehead opened and released vast purple divine lightning. It condensed into a pillar of divine lightning and blasted towards the back of the Xitigaba divine armor. Boom! Thunder exploded and resounded in the sky. The wound on the back of the Xitigaba divine armor immediately expanded several times. The flesh on the wound also became charred like charcoal, and black smoke rose in spirals. The heart-wrenching pain made it furious. It roared and pounced towards Ji Tianqing crazily with its claws. Chapter 1759. While Ji Bai and Xueqi were repelling the Xitigaba divine armor, Ji Tianqing used his strongest trump card. He rushed to the front of the Xitigaba divine armor as fast as a stream of light. He raised his left palm and released endless golden divine flames. God-slaying spear. The destructive golden flames condensed into a 30-meter-long spear and stabbed at the wound on the back of the Xitigaba divine armor. The defense of the Xitigaba divine armor was extremely strong, but its speed was not fast. It was too late to realize that something was wrong. Bang! With a loud, muffled explosion, the god-slaying spear stabbed into its back, penetrating its internal organs and exploding. A large mass of flesh and internal organs were burned to ashes by the golden divine flames. The Xitigaba divine armor roared in pain, spitting out blood and flesh foam from its bloody mouth. It struggled and rolled wildly in the ruins. Seeing this scene, Yunyao decisively seized the opportunity and rushed over with the water reverse divine sword. Heavenly waterline, sword separates the world. She held the water reverse divine sword with both hands and used all her strength to slash out 100-meter-long icy blue sword light. Boom! The Xitigaba divine armor could not dodge in time and was immediately slashed in the back by the sword light. The huge bloody hole with a radius of 30 meters long was immediately cut open by the sword light, and a 20-meter-long wound opened. Black-red blood sprayed out like a fountain. The terrifying cold air of the water reverse divine sword invaded its body and immediately froze its flesh and internal organs. It wailed in pain a few times, and dark golden-colored glazed heavenly fire gushed out of its body. It desperately drilled into the rubble and ruins, trying to escape back to the depths of the ground. Ji Tianqing had already planned this, so how could he let it escape so easily? He took out a mysterious black talisman from his space ring, made a few gestures with both hands, and released a few dazzling lights to activate the talisman. Soul-stabilizing divine talisman. With a low shout, the black talisman ignited with flames and immediately turned into a black stream of light, flying toward the Xitigaba divine armor. Whoosh! The mysterious black stream of light instantly drilled into the body of the Xitigaba divine armor, releasing a mysterious invisible power. Immediately, the roars of the Xitigaba divine armor came to an abrupt end. Its frantically struggling body also stiffened, and it was stunned on the spot. It was as if it had been petrified, as if it had lost its consciousness and remained motionless on the spot. Seeing this scene, Ji Bai and Xueqi revealed puzzled expressions. Even Yunyao was surprised. She looked at Ji Tianxing in disbelief. "Tianxing, you sealed its soul? How did you do it?" Ji Tianxing smiled and explained, "When I was at the God Bestowment Mountain, I saved the third elder's life, so he gave me a bunch of talismans and pills as thanks. The soul-stabilizing sacred talisman was a saint-level talisman that he gave me. It can seal one's soul. Martial artists and demons below the martial sage realm are unable to withstand the power of the soul-stabilizing sacred symbol." "I see." Yunyao was enlightened. She smiled faintly and said, "Saint-level talismans are priceless treasures. You used them just like that?" Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said, "To be able to capture a 6-stage crossing tribulation realm Xitigaba divine armor, it was worth it to use a saint-level talisman. Yao Yao, rest for a while. I'll deal with this Xitigaba divine armor." After speaking, he flew to the rubble and used a capturing technique to put the Xitigaba divine armor into the sword world. He personally escorted the Xitigaba divine armor into the sword world and landed in the peaceful Soil City. In the peaceful Soil City, nearly 8,000 Earth Spirit Clan people were working and cultivating as usual. Ji Tianxing entered the city governor's mansion and asked the guards to find the clan leader, the Golden Mountain King. After the Golden Mountain King bowed to him, he asked, "Young master, what are your orders?" Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "I just captured an ancient mutated beast. I'm going to give it to the Earth Spirit Clan as the clan's guardian divine beast." The Golden Mountain King's eyes widened. He asked in surprise, "What ancient mutated beast?" Ji Tianxing brought him to a spacious square. Only then did he reach out and release a golden light, releasing the Xitigaba divine armor. The 1,000-foot-long Xitigaba divine armor landed on the square with a plop, causing the ground to tremble and dust to fly into the air. When the Golden Mountain King saw the Xitigaba divine armor's appearance, his eyes widened in shock. This ancient mutated beast seems to be the descendant of the burrowing earth beast. Its strength and aura are so powerful, far surpassing the essence soul realm. Could it have reached the tribulation realm? Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. "That's right. This is the ancient mutated beast Xitigaba divine armor. It's a mutated beast between a spirit beast and a divine beast. If it has enough opportunities and resources, it can also grow to the level of a divine beast in the future. Most importantly, this giant beast is the legendary overlord of the earth. It can control the earth and mineral veins." The Golden Mountain King exclaimed for a while before gradually coming back to his senses. He said excitedly, "That's right. For us Earth Spirit Clan, the burrowing earth beast is the best pet and companion. This Xitigaba divine armor has a part of the bloodline of a divine beast. It's a divine beast for us." "Young master, are you really going to give such a rare ancient mutated beast to us?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Of course. Make the best use of it. The Xitigaba divine armor's attributes and power are very compatible with your Earth Spirit Clan. With this divine beast, the Earth Spirit Clan's people will definitely benefit greatly. I'm just worried that the soul fixation talisman can only last for half a month. Can you completely tame this tribulation realm mutated beast in such a short time?" The Golden Mountain King was stunned for a moment. He quickly nodded and said, "Of course I can. Young master, please don't worry. Our Earth Spirit Clan has a blood spirit secret method passed down from our ancestors. It's specially used to sign a contract with a pet. I'll immediately gather all the people of the clan and build an altar to use the secret method. I'll combine the strength of all the people and use everyone's efforts to sign a contract with this Xitigaba divine armor. As long as the spell is cast successfully, this Xitigaba divine armor will become the guardian beast of our clan. It will guard our clan loyally forever." Hearing him say so, Ji Tianxing nodded with relief and said, "That's good. Then I'll leave it to you. You must take care of it properly." The Golden Mountain King bowed excitedly and said solemnly, "Young master, please don't worry. I will definitely not disappoint you. This Xitigaba divine armor is a divine beast that you gave to our clan. Our clan will always remember this kindness and be loyal to you forever." Ji Tianxing nodded and turned to leave. Swish! With a flash of brilliance, he left the sword world and returned to the Sea of Fire. Yun Yao, Ji Bai, and Xueqi did not rest on the mountain peak. They had all drilled into the ruins that were piled up like mountains and were busy excavating the Golden Crow copper mine underground. Although Ji Tianxing had already obtained the most precious Golden Crow copper essence, that mine was also a priceless treasure. Since he had already encountered it, there was no reason to let it go. Chapter 1760. Yun Yao's reverse water divine sword was definitely a divine weapon for digging or veins. Even if the Golden Crow copper ore was incomparably sturdy, she could still use the divine sword to easily dig it out from the ground. Everyone worked for a full 2 hours before they dug out the 1,000-foot-long ore vein. Unfortunately, the ore vein was no longer complete. It had been damaged by the Xitigaba divine armor and broken into several pieces. Ji Tianxing kept a portion of the Golden Crow copper ore and put it into his spatial ring. He put the remaining pieces of the ore vein into the sword world and let the people of the Earth Spirit clan bury the ore vein underground. After doing all this, everyone left the underground and flew back into the air. Ji Tianxing said with a gratified expression, "Although the process was somewhat dangerous and difficult, we worked together. Not only did we get through the difficulties, but we also got such a rich harvest. Everyone, let's find a place to rest for a while. After recovering our magic power, we will continue forward." After saying that, he brought Yun Yao, Ji Bai, and Xueqi and landed on a pale golden mountain peak. Yun Yao used the power of the reverse water divine sword to set up a small formation to resist the power of the colored glass heavenly fire. Everyone stayed in the light barrier of the formation, took pills, sat down, and circulated their energy to adjust their breathing. However, just as everyone sat down and before they could start cultivating, a sinister sneer sounded in the sky. "Hee hee. You 4 little guys are really stupid and ridiculous. Encountering little fat sheep like you, if I don't take advantage of you, I won't be able to live with myself." This was the voice of a middle-aged man. His voice was sharp and ear-piercing, and it was so cold that it made people feel very uncomfortable. Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and the others immediately looked up at the sky. They saw a middle-aged man wearing a black robe and holding a black feather fan in the sky 1,000 feet away. This person had a thin figure and wore a loose black robe, revealing a pale and narrow face. There were 2 mysterious tattoos on his cheeks, and a black spider pattern was imprinted on his forehead. His long hair was also wriggling. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that his thick shoulder-length hair was actually made up of countless thin, black snakes. This person's entire body was emitting a dense evil aura. His sinister appearance caused people to feel fear in their hearts. Moreover, his strength had far surpassed Ji Bai and Xueqi, and he'd attained the 6th level of the Tribulation Realm. Ji Tianxing looked at him for a while and frowned. He secretly sent a voice transmission to Yun Yao and the other 2. "This guy is obviously an evil man. He doesn't have good intentions. Everyone, be careful." Yun Yao nodded to show that she understood. Ji Bai and Xueqi immediately dispersed and used their concealment techniques to hide in the Sea of Fire, ready to attack at any time. The black-robed man looked down at Ji Tianxing and the others, turning a blind eye to the actions of Ji Bai and Xueqi. "Ha ha ha, little fellow. Don't try to play tricks in front of this monarch, and don't even think about resisting. Let me give you a word of advice. Obediently hand over all the treasures you have on you, as well as the mine you just dug up." At this point, the black-robed man paused for a moment, and his gaze fell upon the burial of heaven and water reversal. Feeling the aura of the water reversal sword, his pupils immediately constricted, and a thick sense of shock flashed through his eyes. Immediately, his tone was somewhat hurried, and his voice was sharp as he shouted coldly, "And your treasured swords, you have to obediently hand them over to this monarch. Otherwise, this monarch will bury you in the Sea of Fire, and not even your bones will remain." Hearing these 2 sentences, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's eyes flashed with cold killing intent. Ji Tianxing stared at him coldly and asked, "We don't know you, but you want to kill us and rob us. It can be seen that you are an evil beast. However, you dare to rob us alone. I'm afraid that the one who will die is you." The black-robed man immediately laughed mockingly, waving the black feather fan, and said with contempt, "Ha ha ha. This monarch really didn't see wrongly. You 4 idiots are all inexperienced rookies. In the entire ruins of God, who doesn't know the name of the Black Feather Association? We, the Black Feather Association, Don't need a reason or an excuse to rob and kill anyone. Fine, this monarch is merciful and will let you die knowing. This monarch is Yi Ya, the second-in-command of the Black Feather Association. Remember we, the Black Feather Association, will never fight alone. As his voice fell, 9 figures immediately appeared in the sky around the mountain. Swish! 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 9 Tribulation Realm powerhouses with different appearances and ferocious auras stood in the sea of fire, surrounding the entire mountain. Most of these 9 Tribulation Realm powerhouses had the strength of the 2nd to 4th level of the Tribulation Realm. Among them, there was a white-haired old man, a burly man, a middle-aged scholar, and 2 dwarfs with a thick build. However, they all had a common characteristic, which was that their faces were ferocious, and their bodies exuded a bloodthirsty aura. Among them, a burly man in black armor laughed loudly and said, "Second in command, we are still in a hurry to support the Great Master. Let's end this quickly. These little rookies, just treat them as an appetizer. We can easily get rid of them. Why do you have to talk nonsense with them?" The other Tribulation Realm powerhouses also nodded in agreement, revealing ferocious and bloodthirsty sneers. They all took out their magic treasures and weapons, staring at Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao with murderous eyes, and slowly approached them. Yi Ya, the second-in-command, waved his black feather fan and said with a smile, "You are a group of boors who only know how to fight and kill. Don't scare these 2 little guys. Especially that little beauty. She is simply an outstanding beauty. She is so beautiful that it makes one's heart itch." Before he finished speaking, the group of Tribulation Realm powerhouses all laughed evilly, revealing an expression of sudden realization. "Second in command, we understand. Don't worry. Second in command, don't be impatient. We will capture that little beauty immediately and send her to you. We want to rob her of her wealth, but we also want to rob her of her beauty. Brothers, what are you waiting for? Let's go together and get rid of them quickly. Don't let the second in command wait anxiously." Everyone shouted a few times and immediately waved their swords and sabers, using their secret techniques to kill Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. Ji Bai and Xueqi were eager to protect their masters. They immediately used their secret sword techniques, stabbing out sword light and saber light that filled the sky, blocking the few Tribulation Realm powerhouses. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao also immediately took action. They waved their swords and used their secret techniques to block the other party's attacks. Both sides engaged in a fierce battle in the sea of fire. They both used their full strength and hundreds of strange techniques, fighting until the sky turned dark. The colorful brilliance of magic power condensed into various kinds of light and shadow, intertwining and colliding in the sky, making deafening sounds. The violent and raging shock waves swept away the sea of fire and spread in all directions. Although Ji Tianqing and the other 3 fought back with all their strength, it was difficult for them to fight against the 9 Tribulation Realm powerhouses. They were beaten back and were in danger. Seeing this scene, Yi Ya stood in the sky calmly, watching the battle with a sneer on his face. In his opinion, Ji Tianqing and the other 3 were bound to die. There was no possibility of survival. Chapter 1761. The 2 sides fought for 100 breaths of time before stopping temporarily. Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and the others retreated to the broken mountain peak, forming a defensive circle around each other. Ji Bai and Xueqi were both injured. Their bodies were stained with blood, and their clothes were tattered and ragged. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were also slightly injured. Their robes were stained with blood, and their long hair was draped over their shoulders in a mess. The 1,000-feet mountain peak under their feet was also cracked with dense ravines, and half of it collapsed. The bandits of the Black Feather Gang were still scattered in the sky, surrounding Ji Tianqing and the others. However, they also paid a big price. 2 of the bandits were relatively weak. They were seriously injured by Ji Bai and Xueqi. Their bodies were on the verge of collapse, so they could only escape first. Of the remaining 7 bandits, 4 of them were also injured, and their bodies were dyed red with blood. Seeing this scene, the sneer on Yi Ya's face disappeared. Holding the black feather fan in his hand, he shouted coldly with a gloomy face, "You pieces of trash, weren't you arrogant just now? Why can't you even deal with 4 rookies?" The brawny man in black armor wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said in a dull voice, "Second Master, these 4 guys are not easy to deal with. They can't be underestimated." Another white-haired old man also said in a ruthless tone, "Second Master, the swords of those 2 little beasts don't seem to be ordinary. They are at least saint-level magic treasures. In the battle just now, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao seemed to be the weakest, but they displayed amazing combat strength. Especially Yun Yao's water-reverse divine sword, it was simply unstoppable, and its divine power was matchless. Yi Ya immediately frowned and shouted angrily with a gloomy expression, "Nonsense! If they didn't have such a precious treasure, why would I stop halfway and waste my time to deal with them? You are so useless. Do you want me to do it myself?" The bandits were silent, and no one answered. After a while, the black-armored man said in a deep voice, "Second Master, give us another chance. If we can't take him down, you'll have to do it yourself." As he spoke, the black-armored man took the lead and rushed towards Ji Tianqing. He brandished his crimson broadsword and slashed out a monstrous flame. Ji Bai immediately rushed forward, waving his mysterious black blade, slashing out 19 dazzling blade lights. His saber technique was as fast as lightning, and each strike was faster than the previous one. The power of each strike overlapped like an endless wave. No matter how ferocious the black-armored man's attacks were, they were unable to break through his defense. The other bandits also used their unique skills and charged toward Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao without any regard for their own safety. 3,000 weak waters. Yun Yao shouted with a cold expression. She formed a sword seal with her left hand and waved the divine sword with her right hand, slashing out hundreds of sword lights. Swish, swish, swish. The sword light in the sky formed a sword net that contained the wondrous power of a formation. It turned into a huge vortex that charged toward the bandits. The attacks of the bandits were immediately swallowed by the blue vortex and dissipated. Immediately after, they were also shrouded by the blue vortex and had to endure countless sword lights. They were unable to protect themselves. Ji Tianqing took the opportunity to use his unique skill. He unleashed his 1,000-feet-tall golden sword essence and slashed it at the white-haired old man. White Tiger Sacred Sword. The golden sword essence burst out with a golden light that soared into the sky, forming a huge white tiger phantom that was as large as a mountain. Its power increased several times. The giant sword fell from the sky and instantly slashed the white-haired old man, sending him flying backward. Puff! While he was still in the air, the white-haired old man spat out blood. His entire left arm was cut off. Seeing this scene, Yi Ya's face turned extremely ugly and his eyes were incomparably gloomy. He could no longer remain calm. He shook the black feather fan in his hand and unleashed an overwhelming number of black light blades that rushed toward Ji Tianqing. Soul-rending kill. More than 200 black light blades spun crazily and formed an inescapable net that enveloped Ji Tianqing, leaving him nowhere to hide. The black light blades contained an extremely powerful force that specialized in destroying the soul. It was very insidious. Ji Tianqing's heart trembled. He immediately used his unique skill to block Yi Ya's attack. His body ignited with golden flames and turned into a golden light that merged into the golden sword essence. The Burial of Heaven's sword also became 10,000 feet tall and merged with the golden sword essence. Vermilion Bird's Sacred Sword. The 10,000 feet tall giant sword erupted with destructive power and slashed toward the black light blades. Kaboom! A loud explosion that shook the 9 heavens erupted and resounded through the sky. The inescapable net formed by the black light blades was shattered on the spot and splashed in all directions. The power of the giant sword essence was also exhausted and became dim as it flew back 10,000 feet long. Swoosh! The Burial of Heaven sword was ejected and Ji Tianqing was also sent flying. He appeared in the sky with a pale face and spat out 3 mouthfuls of blood in a row. On the surface, he didn't seem to be injured. However, his internal organs had been ruptured and more than a dozen of his meridians had been broken. Most importantly, his soul had suffered a heavy blow and his consciousness had been blurred. Damn Yi Ya, he must have the strength of a 7th-stage tribulation transcendent stage cultivator. This thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind and his heart was filled with anger and unwillingness. The difference in strength between him and Yi Ya was too great. Even if he tried his best and used his strongest trump card, he couldn't shake Yi Ya. On the contrary, Yi Ya's casual secret technique had seriously injured him. Such a result made him want to retreat. We can't stay here any longer. Otherwise, we will all die here. We must find a way to escape. After making up his mind, he hurriedly sent a voice transmission to Yun Yao and Ji Bai to stay in the dark. Then, he took out a dark red elixir from his interspatial ring and stuffed it into his mouth. This elixir was called the World Annihilation Elixir. It was a tribulation transcendence elixir personally refined by Hong Chengtian. The elixir's name was very domineering and its effect was also very domineering. After Ji Tianqing took the World Annihilation Elixir, the elixir quickly dissolved in his body and erupted with endless magic power, causing his body to swell violently. His injuries were temporarily suppressed and his nerves were numb, so he couldn't feel any pain. His combat strength was increasing at an incredible speed. In just a few breaths, he had become a 30-meter-tall giant and his combat strength had increased by 5 times. The World Annihilation Elixir's effect can only last for 100 breaths of time. Once the elixir's effect is over, I will collapse and faint. I must escape with everyone during this period of time. Fight with your back to the river. Victory or defeat depends on this. This thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind and he hurriedly used his secret technique and rushed toward Yiya without any regard for his own safety. Heaven-splitting sword. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed with all his strength. A 1,000-meter-long golden sword immediately appeared in the sky and slashed toward Yiya with the power to destroy the world. An unlucky bandit happened to be between Ji Tianqing and Yiya and was instantly hit by the giant sword. Bang! With a muffled explosion, the third-stage Tribulation Transcendence Realm bandit was directly smashed into pieces by the giant sword and turned into pieces of flesh and blood that filled the sky. In the next moment, the giant sword arrived in front of Yiya and golden light enveloped his body. Chapter 1762. At the critical moment, Yiya did not hesitate to use a secret technique to block the attack of the giant golden sword. He stretched out his arms and released a soaring black light, which condensed into 4 pairs of wide black wings to protect himself. At the same time, the giant golden sword that was thousands of feet long struck him hard. Bam! With a dull explosion, he was sent flying by the giant sword, rolling and crashing into the ruins in the distance. Boom! The mound of ruins that was thousands of feet high was smashed into pieces by him, splashing gravel all over the sky. The 4 pairs of huge black wings were also cracked by the huge sword, and were shattered into pieces along with a cracking sound. However, Yiya's strength was indeed strong. After taking such a heavy blow, he was only slightly injured. After crashing into the ruins, black light gushed out of his body and shook the gravel around him away. His figure flashed and rushed out. At this time, Ji Tianqing had already taken Yun Yao and Ji Bai to guard the dark. They broke through the encirclement of several bandits and fled as fast as lightning. Yiya shouted in a cold tone and chased after them with a murderous aura. "Kid, you still want to escape? Dream on!" In order to snatch Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's treasured swords, he had already lost several capable men. If he could not kill Ji Tianqing and the others smoothly, his loss would be too great. In the blink of an eye, Yiya caught up with Ji Tianqing and the others. He released an overwhelming black light, which formed tens of thousands of ferocious-looking black crows and enveloped them. Wherever the black crows passed, even the colored glass heavenly fire was swept away. Tens of thousands of black crows lined up neatly and formed a huge net, releasing an extremely powerful suppressive force. Yun Yao hurriedly waved the water reversal divine sword and slashed out hundreds of sword lights with all her might. Bam, 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 bam. The icy blue sword light that was hundreds of feet long slashed at the black crows in the sky, creating an earth-shattering sound. At least thousands of black crows were smashed into pieces by the sword light on the spot. A huge gap was torn in the black net, which could not trap Ji Tianqing and the others at all. Swish! Swish! With a flash of multicolored light, Ji Tianqing and the others rushed out of the black light net and into the vast sea of fire. Ji Bai and Xueqi worked together to cast a secret technique and used the void escape technique. They brought Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao and teleported dozens of miles away. Yiya was immediately shaken off. He flew into a rage and led several bandits in a chase. However, the bandits were all injured and flying at a slower speed. There was no way they could catch up. Yiya's speed was the fastest. After 100 breaths of time, he was about to catch up with Ji Tianqing and the others. However, Ji Tianqing and his companions had all crawled into the magical equipment space of the reverse water sword. Yun Yao controlled the reverse water sword and disappeared into the crimson sea of fire at the speed of light. No matter how strong Yiya was, no matter how good his hunting skills were, it was impossible for him to catch up. A quarter of an hour later, he was completely shaken off and lost track of Ji Tianqing and the others. Helplessly, he could only give up the chase. Not long after, Several bandits rushed over and surrounded him. Seeing his gloomy expression and his soaring anger and killing intent, the bandits were silent and did not dare to speak. They looked trembling with fear. Yi stared at the depths of the flaming mountain, his eyes flashing with a ferocious cold light. Damn little bastards, you actually fled into the depths of the flaming mountain. You are courting death. Don't let me find you, or I will skin you all and tear you into pieces. Yi cursed with a venomous tone, his heart filled with humiliation and anger. As the second in command of the Black Feather Gang, he had always been able to call the wind and summon the rain and do whatever he wanted. However, he never expected that he would fall in the hands of a few rookies. Not only did he fail to steal the treasure, but he also suffered such heavy losses. This was simply a great humiliation. Yi had to consider how he should explain this to the First Master. In the depths of the Flaming Mountain, under a certain mountain range, the 3-feet-long reverse water divine sword had shrunk to the size of an embroidery needle and was hidden in the rock layer underground, motionless. The terrifying glass heavenly fire could not do anything to the reverse water divine sword. Inside the reverse water divine sword, there was a vast magic treasure space. This space was dozens of miles wide, like a small world. There was no sun, moon, or stars in the small world, but there was a huge ice-blue water ball hanging in the sky, emitting endless cold light. There was a grassland, a lake, and a tall mountain on the ground. At the top of the mountain, there was also an ice-blue palace built, as if it was made of ice. It was magnificent. Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, Ji Bai, and Xueqi were all in the palace, healing their injuries. Ji Bai and Xueqi's injuries were slightly lighter, so they were sitting in the main hall, recuperating. Ji Tianqing's injuries were the most serious, and he was healing in the secret room. Yun Yao sat in front of him, using a secret technique with a solemn expression. She activated the longevity divine power and continuously poured it into his body. Under the nourishment of the longevity divine power, his injuries quickly healed, and the injuries to his meridians and divine soul were also quickly healing. After an entire day, Ji Tianqing's injuries stabilized, and Yun Yao stopped casting. She stayed beside Ji Tianqing, silently meditating and recuperating. Half a day later, Ji Tianqing's injuries and magic power were 80% recovered, and he ended his cultivation. Yun Yao opened her eyes and asked with concern, "Tianqing, how do you feel?" Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, "It's nothing serious, don't worry." After a pause he asked Yun Yao, "Yao Yao, where are we now?" Yun Yao revealed a helpless look and said bitterly, "I don't know, I was too anxious when I ran away and forgot to remember the route. However, we ran for 200,000 miles in one breath, so we should be in the depths of the Flaming Mountain now." The depths of the Flaming Mountain? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows, and the corner of his mouth curled into a meaningful sneer. "I heard them say before that the glazed fire dragon appeared in the depths of the Flaming Mountain, and hundreds of experts have come here, trying to capture the glazed fire dragon. If we are lucky, we should be able to see the legendary glazed fire dragon soon." Yun Yao thought for a moment and shook her head gently. "If we really see the glazed fire dragon, it might not be lucky. It must be very dangerous to be surrounded by hundreds of experts." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "That's true, but we are weak, and it's easy for others to ignore us. As long as we don't run into people from the Black Feather Gang, we should be safe." Black Feather Gang. Yun Yao frowned and thought for a moment, and reminded him with a serious face, "Tianqing, I think I heard people from the Black Feather Gang say that they are rushing to support the big boss. It seems that the big boss of the Black Feather Gang must be in the depths of the Flaming Mountain, and is most likely dealing with the glazed fire dragon. We must be extra careful, or else we might be discovered by the Black Feather Gang." Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood, and reminded Yun Yao, "Let's put the glazed fire dragon aside first, and ignore it." Chapter 1763. Ji Tianqing had already gathered 3 of the 4 materials needed to repair the Burial of Heaven. He already had the Heavenly Fire glazed true gold, Yin Yang divine jade, and golden crow copper marrow. He was only missing the wind thunder meteorite. With his previous experience, Ji Tianqing was even more cautious this time. He had Yun Yao put away the reverse water divine sword to prevent its aura from attracting the covetous eyes of experts. The 2 of them flew through the blazing mountain, unhurriedly searching the various peaks and exploring the underground veins. Soon, the 2 of them discovered that this area was indeed the depths of the blazing mountain, and it was even more dangerous and terrifying. The sea of fire was even more violent, and the underground veins were even more abundant. At the same time, the various demons and giant beasts hiding underground were also denser and stronger. The two of them could only slow down and explore even more carefully. 2 hours later, while the two of them were exploring the underground veins, they awakened an ancient mutated beast, the blazing dragon lion. It was a giant beast that was as big as a mountain and had an explosive temperament. It had already undergone 6 heavenly tribulations. The two of them were chased by the blazing dragon lion. After a dozen or so moves in the sea of fire, they quickly retreated. If they fought with all their strength, they could naturally defeat the blazing dragon lion with their trump cards. However, doing so was meaningless. They would not gain any benefits and would even put themselves in danger. If the battle caused too much of a commotion and attracted other demons or experts, their situation would become even more dangerous. Therefore, the two of them chose to retreat and shake off the blazing dragon lion. For the next half a day, the two of them walked through the blazing mountain, exploring the veins even more cautiously. During this process, they encountered several groups of tribulation transcendence experts. These experts came from all over the world. There were famous orthodox sects and also evil sections. Some of them were digging for veins and gems underground, while others were hurrying on as if they were searching for something. However, everyone remained vigilant and guarded against each other. Even if they encountered each other, they would not easily meet each other, let alone have no conflicts. Before they knew it, it was already night. The blazing mountain in the middle of the night was a gorgeous and magnificent sight. The night sky was dark, and there were sparse stars scattered in the firmament, shining brightly and emitting a cold light. On the ground, there was a boundless sea of fire. Raging scarlet flames surged and rose. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were traversing through the mountains, releasing their divine senses to explore the underground veins. Suddenly, a loud, dull sound came from the distant night sky. Rumble. The muffled sound was like muffled thunder in summer, rolling from the horizon and reverberating in the sky above the mountain of flames. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were awakened. They immediately looked up at the night sky in the depths of the fiery mountain. In the dark night sky, rays of colorful light flashed across like lightning. The dazzling multicolored lights condensed into sword and saber auras, as well as the shadows of various spells. They collided fiercely in the night sky, then collapsed and shattered. Clearly, there were experts fighting in the depths of the mountain of flames. Ever since Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao entered the flaming mountain, they had seen countless tribulation transcendence experts and saw many experts fighting. However, it was the first time they had seen such an earth-shattering scene. The area where the brilliance of the spells lit up was at least tens of thousands of miles away from them. Only experts above the 7th level of the tribulation transcendence realm could cause such an astonishing movement. The two stood on the top of the mountain, looking at the night sky in the north, quietly observing. Suddenly, the two saw a huge fiery red shadow flashing in the light of the spells that lit up the night sky. That light shadow was at least dozens of miles long. Its appearance was like a giant dragon. It cut through the night sky fiercely and shattered countless sword and saber auras. Not long after, the two of them heard muffled sounds coming from the horizon, mixed with a few high-pitched dragon roars. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's expression suddenly changed, and their eyes flashed with bright light. There's actually a dragon roar. Could that huge light shadow just now be the glazed fire dragon? The experts who come here are very cautious. They won't act rashly. If I'm not wrong, there should be a group of experts besieging the glazed fire dragon. The two of them exchanged a few words through voice transmission and then looked at each other. Why don't we go over and take a look? Okay. Even if we can't interfere, it's good to see it with our own eyes. After a short conversation, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao reached a consensus and rushed to the north together. In order to reach the scene as soon as possible, Ji Tianxing rode the primordial spirit magic sword and flew with Yun Yao. As time passed, the two of them quickly approached the battlefield of the battle. The closer they were to the battlefield, the clearer the scene of the battle became. All kinds of dazzling and colorful spells constantly flickered in the night sky, weaving a breathtaking scene and blowing a storm that covered the sky. The giant dragon phantom that traversed the night sky appeared dozens of times. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao became more and more certain that their judgment was correct. After a full 4 hours, the two of them flew 60,000 miles away and arrived near the battlefield. However, when the two of them arrived, the battle had already ended. The two of them could only see that the mountain range and the ground within a radius of 500 miles had turned into ruins. The ground was covered with huge pits and ravines, and there were piles of messy gravel everywhere. In many of the pits and ruins, there were also fragments of weapons and armor scattered, stained with dark red blood. There were also some scattered pieces of corpses scattered in every corner of the ruins, inconspicuous. The world was still filled with chaotic Dharma power aura, and the surging sea of fire could not wipe away the traces of the battle. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao discovered that several groups of powerhouses were riddled with scars and looked terrible. These people looked depressed and quietly left the battlefield, retreating into the distance. In addition, many powerhouses rushed over from all directions to check the situation of the battlefield like them. The two of them didn't need to ask to know that those powerhouses must have seen the scene of the battle and rushed over to check it out. An hour later, the two of them checked the ruins and found many clues. During this period, Ji Tianqing also saved a seriously injured Tribulation Transcendence powerhouse who was on the verge of losing consciousness. After saving that powerhouse, he asked a lot of questions. That expert was filled with gratitude and told Ji Tianqing everything he knew about the situation. After he recovered some of his Dharma power, he bid farewell to Ji Tianqing and quietly left the battlefield. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao also left the ruins and continued to rush into the depths of the flaming mountain. While hurrying, the two of them were still communicating with each other through voice transmission. It's a pity that we came too late. The glazed fire dragon has already escaped. I just asked. Last night, several groups of powerhouses discovered the glazed fire dragon and joined forces to besiege it. However, the first few groups of powerhouses who attacked were basically killed by the glazed fire dragon. The commotion of the battle attracted more people to join the battle and join forces to besiege the glazed fire dragon. However, those powerhouses were no match for the glazed fire dragon and suffered heavy casualties. Chapter 1764. After hearing Ji Tianqing's words, Yun Yao looked confused and surprised. Those top powers were all in the Crossing Calamity Realm and most of them were above level 2. Dozens of top powers in the Crossing Calamity Realm could not defeat the glazed fire dragon and more than half of them were killed? Has the glazed fire dragon reached the martial sage realm? Ji Tianqing shook his head and said firmly, I have asked that person just now. The glazed fire dragon's strength is definitely not at the martial sage realm. It is still in the Crossing Calamity Realm. That is why those top powers dared to attack the glazed fire dragon when they found it. If it has reached the martial sage realm, who would dare to attack it? Yun Yao was enlightened and nodded. I see. But Granny Long said that the glazed fire dragon had passed through the 8th calamity 1,000 years ago. Now that 1,000 years have passed, why is the glazed fire dragon still in the Crossing Calamity Realm? I don't know about that. Ji Tianqing said solemnly. Before that top power left, he told me that the glazed fire dragon's lair might be nearby. He has been exploring this area for half a month and has met hundreds of top powers in the Crossing Calamity Realm. Now, everyone is searching for the glazed fire dragon's lair and they all want to tame it. Yun Yao looked at the sky in the north and said in a complicated tone, Those top powers are rushing to the north. This means that the glazed fire dragon's lair might be somewhere in the north. Tianqing, should we continue to look for the mineral veins or should we rush over now? Ji Tianqing thought for a while and made up his mind. He said, We don't have to rush. Let's rush to the north and explore the mineral veins along the way. Okay. Yun Yao nodded. Then, she thought of something important and asked, Tianqing, it is getting closer to your crossing calamity. Are you ready? Ji Tianqing smiled confidently and nodded. The calamity should come tomorrow. However, I can go through it at any time. Yun Yao shook her head and looked at him seriously. She advised, If we were on Luotian Mountain, I wouldn't be worried about you. But this is Flame Mountain. Danger lurks at every step, and experts are everywhere. Ji Tianqing smiled and said, It doesn't matter. Perhaps this is God's will. Yun Yao saw that he was so confident, as if he had a card up his sleeve, and the worry in her heart dissipated. Unknowingly, 10 hours had passed and it was already noon. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao continued to explore. They had already explored tens of thousands of miles of mountain range. During this period, the two of them discovered hundreds of mineral veins. Basically, they were all ancient mineral veins with a history of 10,000 years. All kinds of ancient mineral veins contained rare and precious ores and gems, which were very tempting. However, their goal was very clear. They would not waste time on those mineral veins. At this moment, when the two of them flew past a low-lying valley, Ji Tianqing suddenly stopped. He stood in the sky above the valley and looked down at the valley below. He concentrated on controlling his divine sense to explore the situation underground. Seeing that he had stopped, Yun Yao asked him telepathically, "Tianqing, did you find something?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "There seems to be the aura of thunder and lightning under this valley. It's very unusual." Yun Yao also released her divine sense, carefully probing the 100-mile-wide valley. Soon, she found some clues. There is indeed the power of thunder and wind. Could it be that there is wind and thunder meteorite iron under this valley? Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "It's very likely. Let's go down and take a look." After that, the two of them passed through the Sea of Fire and landed in the pale golden valley. The terrain of the valley was rather strange. It was like a huge porcelain bowl. The top was open and the bottom was flat. Moreover, the valley was surrounded by mountains, as if a huge dragon was entrenched here. Special terrains and environments would often give birth to special heavenly treasures. This was the common knowledge of the martial arts world. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao used the earth escape technique to pass through the pale golden ground and rock layer, and drilled into the depths of the ground. When the two of them drilled into the ground, they fell into a spacious cave. This cave with a radius of 10,000 feet was naturally formed. The cave was filled with raging red fire. The temperature was terrifyingly high, like a huge furnace. The walls of the cave were dark golden. There were also rows of icicle-like stalactites hanging on the ceiling. Ji Tianqing was looking at the situation in the cave. At this time, Yun Yao exclaimed in a low voice, "Tianqing, look under your feet." He lowered his head and looked at the ground under his feet. He saw that the ground of the cave was quite flat. It was a layer of dark golden rock. The ground was covered with lines of the rock layer. They were densely packed and intertwined together, vaguely forming some kind of special pattern. Those lines were still glowing with dark red and light purple light, as if they were transmitting some kind of power. In the middle of the cave, there was a huge rock with a radius of 100 feet protruding from the ground. The huge rock was round, like a huge millstone. Only the top half of it was exposed, and the bottom half was connected to the ground. The lines on the ground and the rock extended to the surroundings of the huge rock and surrounded it. At first glance, the lines on the ground and the huge rock looked like a mysterious formation. Ji Tianqing used his divine sense to sense for a moment and found that it was indeed a formation, and it was formed naturally. Not only the ground and the huge rock, but even the entire cave was filled with the power of a formation. There are all kinds of strange things in this world. I didn't expect this cave to form a natural formation. I don't know how many tens of thousands of years have passed before this place became like this today. Ji Tianqing's eyes were filled with joy as he exclaimed. Yun Yao also stared at the huge rock with bright eyes and said expectantly, "Tianqing, that huge rock is the core and foundation of the formation. The power of heaven and earth absorbed by this natural formation has gathered in that huge rock. I can sense that terrifying heavenly flame, lightning, and astral wind energies have been accumulated in that seemingly ordinary rock." Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a chuckle, "Now that you mention it, I feel that the huge rock is like an egg. As long as we peel off the eggshell, we will be able to find the treasure inside." Yun Yao also revealed a faint smile and said in a complicated tone, "I hope our guess is right. This huge rock has the materials you want." As she spoke, she took out the reverse water sword and walked toward the huge rock. She walked to the side of the huge rock and stood still. After a moment of consideration, she held the reverse water sword and slashed at a corner of the huge rock. Clang! With a crisp sound of metal colliding, the corner of the huge rock was cut off. A large piece of golden rock fell to the ground. The cut was smooth and flat, and it spewed out a scorching red fire. Chapter 1765. When the purple light lit up, a violent and ferocious lightning arc suddenly exploded in the air. Crack! Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were pleasantly surprised when they saw the thunder. "Just as I thought. We have the heavenly fire and thunder. Together with the astral wind, we have enough conditions to form the wind-thunder meteorite." Yun Yao stared at the round boulder with sparkling eyes and said to Ji Tianqing, "Tianqing, this boulder should be a meteorite from outer space. Its material is very hard. Other than the reverse water divine sword, ordinary magical treasures can't cut it at all." Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement and analyzed, It should be a meteorite from outer space. This is the only way to explain the origin of this valley, this cave, and this natural array. Maybe tens of thousands of years ago, a meteorite flew from outer space and smashed into this area. A deep pit was smashed into the ground. The bottom was small and flat. The top of the pit was spread out by the impact, forming the shape of a bowl. After many years, the deep pit became this bowl-like valley. This meteorite from outer space was also sleeping deep underground. The mysterious power of the meteorite and the special environment of the fiery mountain formed a cave here. After many years, the cave and the meteorite gradually absorbed the power of heaven and earth and formed this natural array. Later on, the array absorbed the heavenly fire, thunder, and astral wind and gathered them in the meteorite. It was these tens of thousands of years and this meteorite that created this marvelous scene today. Yun Yao agreed with Ji Tianxing's analysis. Tianxing, the process of your analysis should be the truth. Even if there are some deviations, it's not a big deal. However, this is just our guess. The key is whether or not the wind-thunder meteorite is formed in this meteorite. Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. This is simple. Cut it open with a heavenly fire divine sword, and the answer will be revealed soon. Yun Yao nodded in agreement. She held the reverse water divine sword again and slashed at the huge meteorite. Another crisp clang rang out, and another corner of the meteorite was cut off by the divine sword. Yun Yao didn't break the meteorite directly because she was afraid of damaging the wind-thunder meteorite iron inside the meteorite. Like peeling a fruit, she held the reverse water divine sword and cut off the edges of the meteorite bit by bit. As time passed, the meteorite became smaller and smaller. The reverse water divine sword was truly capable of slicing through iron like mud. It was indestructible. Ji Tianxing collected the shaved meteorites and stored them in his spatial ring. This meteorite had been refined by the heaven fire, wind, and thunder for tens of thousands of years, and had become an extremely rare gem. It was already a top-grade treasure. Very quickly, 2 hours passed. Yun Yao had also shaved more than half of the meteorite that had a radius of 10 zhang, leaving only 3 zhang in size. At the edge of the meteorite, purple stone could be clearly seen. It was formed after being nourished by lightning for tens of thousands of years. At the same time, the heavenly fire, lightning, and astral wind continued to surge out from the fracture. This made Yun Yao even more certain that the wind-thunder meteorite iron must have been formed in the core of the meteorite. She didn't feel tired at all. She continued to wield the reverse water divine sword and exploit the meteorite bit by bit. However, after more than half of the meteorite had been shaved off, the natural formation in the cave was destroyed. As time passed, the ground and walls of the cave began to change greatly. The rock layer on the ground began to crack. The lines and patterns on the ground were broken and twisted. The rock walls around the cave kept cracking. Even the stalactites on the ceiling of the cave broke and fell to the ground. Not long after, muffled rumbling sounds came from underground. The ground began to tremble. Ji Tianxing subconsciously thought that some powerful demon beast was hiding underground and had been awakened by him and Yun Yao. He immediately took out the sword of burial of heaven and checked the ground vigilantly. However, when he probed the ground with his soul consciousness, he found that no demon beast had appeared. It was only because the natural formation had been destroyed that the balance of this area was broken. That was why the ground had cracked and changed so drastically. The rumbling sounds became more and more deafening. The cave shook more and more violently. The ceiling of the cave kept cracking. Many golden boulders fell down and hit the ground with loud bangs. Ji Tianxing hurriedly blocked the boulders so that they wouldn't affect Yun Yao. Seeing that the cave was collapsing faster and faster, he reminded her, "Yao Yao, we have to speed up. The cave is about to collapse." Yun Yao answered without turning her head. "Okay. Hold on a little longer. We will see the results soon." As expected, she sped up and quickly cut the meteorite. About 7 minutes later, 90% of the huge meteorite had been cut. It was only 10 feet long. At this point, the dark golden meteorite had turned into a dazzling color. Not only was there the purple of the lightning thunder, but there was also the gold of the heavenly fire and the pale white of the astral wind. This was no longer just a meteorite. It was a magnificent gem. Suddenly, there was a loud rumbling sound. The crumbling cave could no longer withstand the impact of the ground cracking. It collapsed immediately. The walls of the cave collapsed. The huge ceiling of the cave was broken into pieces and smashed down with a terrifying force. Yao Yao, be careful. Ji Tianxing's expression changed. He immediately took out his Kenshin battle robe and formed a pair of golden wings. He opened his wide golden wings to protect himself and Yun Yao. Boom, boom, boom. The huge boulders that covered the sky immediately drowned him and Yun Yao. A deafening rumbling sound resounded through the sky. The valley within a 100-mile radius collapsed and caved in deeply. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were buried deep underground. The originally flat valley turned into a deep, broken pit. The mountains around the valley were also affected. They shook violently and cracked. Loud noises shook the sky. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were protected by the golden wings. They were not injured. However, the two of them were buried under endless earth and rocks. It was as if they were being suppressed by a huge mountain. They could not hold on for too long. Yun Yao did not have time to slowly cut the meteorite and look for the wind and thunder meteorite iron. In a hurry, she had to use the water reverse divine sword to dig up the 3-meter-long 5-colored meteorite. The meteorite, which seemed to be only the size of a millstone, was actually as heavy as a 10,000-foot mountain. Ji Tianxing opened the entrance of the sword world and put the whole meteorite into the sword world. He would slowly cut it up later. After doing all this, he and Yun Yao tried their best to get out of the ground. However, the earth-shaking sound from before had already spread throughout a 1,000-mile radius. It had alarmed several groups of strong masters in the tribulation stage. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao left the ruined valley. As soon as they flew high into the sky, they were targeted by 2 groups of strong masters. There were only 3 strong masters in one group. They seemed to be from a famous sect. They were all wearing Taoist robes and feathered crowns. However, there were 6 strong masters in the other group. They were all injured and looked ferocious. Chapter 1766. Yi flew quietly in the sea of fire and stared ahead gloomily. His long hair was fluttering in the wind. His face was cold and twisted, and his whole body was surging with killing intent. He had found Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao in front of him and wanted to kill them immediately. But he kept calm and tried to restrain the anger and killing intent in his heart. He knew very well that although Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao looked weak, they had good fighting strength. If he acted rashly, even if he could injure them, he might not be able to kill them. Therefore, Yi waited patiently for an opportunity. The 5 injured bandits were following behind him and were on guard at all times. Everyone secretly followed Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao and flew 30,000 miles away. One of the bandits finally couldn't hold back the doubts in his heart and asked Yi through voice transmission, "Second Master, we finally found those 2 guys. When can we take action?" Yi replied through voice transmission without looking back. "Those 2 little bastards' strength and means can't be underestimated. We've already suffered a loss once before. How can we not learn a lesson? I've already contacted the First Master. They are in the depths of the Mountain of Flames in the north and are busy searching for the lair of the glazed fire dragon. Those 2 little bastards went straight to the north. They must want to find the glazed fire dragon's lair too. Since that's the case, they're walking right into the trap. We just need to follow them and we'll soon find a chance to kill them completely." The bandits all heard his voice transmission and immediately understood what he meant. "I understand. Second Master means that we just need to keep an eye on those 2 guys. That man and woman are rushing to the north and will soon meet the First Master and the others. At that time we can easily kill them. Second Master is wise. We've already failed once. We can't act rashly again." The bandits had seen Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's means and were also seriously injured. If they had a choice, they certainly didn't want to fight with them again. One of them might die on the spot. Following the other party like this and waiting to meet up with the First Master was both worry-free and safe, so why not? However, at this moment, Yi suddenly realized that Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had changed their route. They did not continue to fly north. Instead, they turned around and flew east. Judging from the 2's movements, it seemed like they had suddenly discovered something and changed their minds. Yi immediately frowned and his face darkened. He cursed to himself. 2 damned little bastards. Could it be that they had already discovered that this monarch was following them? But this monarch has used the most covert tracking technique and has always maintained a distance of 50 kilometers from them. It's impossible for them to discover me. Yi muttered in his heart and was slightly bewildered. The criminals behind him also noticed that Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had changed their direction. They immediately became anxious. Second Master, those two fellows actually went east. Have they already discovered us? Second Master, what should we do now? Continue to follow them? They must have discovered us. If we don't take action now, I'm afraid they will escape again. Second Master, make a decision quickly. When Yiya heard the words of the criminals, his face immediately darkened and he scolded in a dignified tone. It must be because you pieces of trash were exposed that they were alerted. The criminals were rendered speechless by his scolding. They could only remain silent and could not refute him. Yiya continued. What are you waiting for? Follow those two fellows closely and see what they want to do. If they want to escape, we'll take action. After that, he sped up with the criminals, for fear that Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao would escape. About 2 hours later, both parties had flown more than 10,000 kilometers. At this time, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao suddenly stopped. The two of them landed in a deep valley and hid at the bottom of the valley. On both sides of the canyon were towering mountains that were thousands of feet high and stretched for tens of thousands of kilometers. The canyon was hundreds of kilometers long and dozens of kilometers wide. The terrain was quite rugged and steep. The raging red fire enveloped the canyon and obscured the situation at the bottom, making it impossible to see clearly. Yiya saw Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao enter the bottom of the canyon with his own eyes and immediately revealed a sinister smile. Humph! Those two reckless things. Could it be that they still want to rely on this canyon to escape from this monarch's pursuit? It just so happens that the terrain here is desolate and almost no one comes to disturb us. Since they've chosen to hide here, we'll turn this canyon into their burial ground. As he spoke, Yiya led the criminals and rushed into the canyon with a murderous aura. Of course, Yiya did not want to repeat the same mistake and could not just charge in recklessly. After entering the canyon, he first ascertained the location of Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. Then, he took out 5 palm-sized black statues and handed them to the 5 criminals. The few of you, take my 5 poison command and go to the 5 directions of Ding, Mao, Chen, Yin, and Hai respectively. Follow my instructions and plant the 5 poison command. I want to set up a heaven extinction earthly fiend 5 poison formation and seal this canyon so that they have no place to escape. This time, we can only succeed, we cannot fail. The 5 criminals each took a black statue and revealed a look of anticipation. They nodded solemnly to show that they understood. Then, the 5 criminals spread out in the canyon with the 5 poison command and went to set up the array foundation. Yiya stood in the sky above the canyon and took out many spirit stones, compasses, and array formation materials. He began to set up a tribulation-level array. The heaven extinction earthly fiend 5 poison formation he wanted to set up was a high-grade tribulation-level array. It could seal hundreds of miles of heaven and earth and release the heaven extinction earthly fiend 5 poison to kill all living things. Hundreds of years ago, he was the notorious butcher and executioner of the heaven extinction divine kingdom. He once used the heaven extinction earthly fiend 5 poison formation to destroy a 1,000-year-old ancient city overnight and poison more than 1 million people to ashes. Even the birds and beasts inside and outside the city, as well as the ants and insects underground, were all wiped out. Under the cover of the array, hundreds of miles of heaven and earth were barren. Now that hundreds of years had passed, his strength was several times stronger, and the power of the array he used was also more powerful. He had absolute confidence that once the array was set up, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao would not be able to escape and would not be able to escape. At the same time, in a cave at the bottom of the valley, Ji Tianqing was sitting cross-legged in the cave, meditating with a solemn expression. Yun Yao was holding the reverse water divine sword and guarding the entrance of the cave with a serious expression. Her eyes were full of concern. She looked at Ji Tianqing, then looked up at the sky and prayed silently. Tianqing, oh Tianqing, even if you are a genius, nothing must happen to you during the tribulation in the flaming mountain. Just as she was praying in her heart, the sky above the valley began to change. Chapter 1767. In a short 100 breaths of time, the entire canyon was covered by gray clouds. Endless gray clouds gathered together, spinning rapidly, forming a black vortex with a radius of 100 miles. Purple and blue lightning arcs flickered continuously in the pitch-black vortex, lighting up with dazzling lightning. An incomparably violent hurricane pressed down, blowing away the heavenly fire in the canyon. Yiya and the 5 bandits were busy setting up the grand array, and it was about to be completed. Suddenly seeing the strange phenomenon in the sky, everyone stopped and revealed a bewildered expression. What's going on? Why did a heaven and earth phenomenon suddenly appear? Heavens! Those black clouds filling the sky are clearly tribulation clouds. Is someone going to transcend tribulation? Impossible! Among us, even if someone is going to transcend tribulation, they have to wait several decades, right? Tribulation clouds and heavenly lightning appearing at the same time, someone is definitely going to transcend tribulation. If the person transcending tribulation isn't us, then it's very likely to be that man and woman. No wonder they suddenly changed direction and ran to hide in this canyon. Turns out they want to transcend tribulation here. Ha ha ha. It's really heaven's will. Looks like we don't need to make a move. That young man and woman are going to die under the heavenly tribulation. The bandits discussed telepathically. They were all gloating and excited. Yiya also had the same thought, a mocking sneer at the corners of his mouth, waiting to watch a good show. He looked down at the canyon from above and muttered to himself, "Heaven is helping me. Looks like I don't need to make a move. Those two little bastards are going to turn to ashes under the heavenly tribulation soon." After saying that, he used divine sense voice transmission to order the 5 bandits. Everyone, no need to perfect the grand array. Even if it's set up, it will be destroyed by the heavenly tribulation. You guys stay by the 5 poison token and keep an eye on the movements in the canyon at all times. Keep an eye on those 2 fellows for me. If they are killed by the heavenly tribulation, it's fine. If they luckily transcend the heavenly tribulation, you guys immediately make a move and be sure to kill them. The 5 bandits hurriedly agreeing very readily. Probably in their minds, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao absolutely could not transcend the heavenly tribulation and would definitely be killed by the heavenly lightning. After all, every martial artist would choose an absolutely safe place to avoid being disturbed when transcending tribulation. Even so, there was still a slim chance of survival under the heavenly tribulation. Everyone was certain that there was no need for them to make a move today. They only needed to watch the show. The tribulation cloud vortex and lightning above the canyon became more and more dazzling and terrifying. Even from thousands of miles away, one could clearly see the tribulation clouds and lightning in the sky. 2 groups of tribulation transcendence experts happened to pass by. One of the groups consisted of 3 women. The leader was an old granny with a head full of white hair. She was holding a golden dragon head walking stick. Following behind her was a middle-aged woman in luxurious clothes and a young woman with a pretty face and an icy temperament. When the 3 of them saw the tribulation clouds and lightning in the sky, they secretly discussed for a while before rushing in the direction of the tribulation cloud vortex. The other group consisted of 2 men. The leader was a white-haired old man wearing a purple robe. He held a golden horsetail whisk in his hand and wore a crown with 3 flowers and 7 stars on his head. Behind him was a young man dressed in black. He was tall and sturdy and had a valiant aura. The 2 of them were hurrying through the sea of fire when they suddenly saw the tribulation clouds and lightning in the sky. The purple-robed old man immediately stopped. He frowned as he looked at the tribulation clouds in the sky. He muttered to himself in surprise, "Someone is actually transcending tribulation in the flaming mountain? Are they tired of living?" The young man also raised his head to look at the sky, revealing a shocked expression. He said in disbelief, "The flaming mountain is so dangerous, yet there is actually someone who dares to transcend tribulation here? Even if one transcends tribulation in a safe place, it is still a slim chance of survival. To transcend tribulation in such a dangerous environment, wouldn't one die without a doubt?" After saying that, the young man looked at the purple-robed old man and asked, "Martial Uncle Bright Sword, this kind of thing is really rare. Should we go over and take a look?" The purple-robed old man was Martial Lord Bright Sword. He frowned and thought for a moment before saying hesitantly, "Chen Yu, we still have business to do." The young man named Chen Yu bowed and said, "Martial Uncle, so many experts are searching for the glazed fire dragon's lair, but there is no result. Even if we rush over, what's the use? Now that someone is transcending tribulation in the flaming mountain, this kind of thing is very rare. Don't you want to go and take a look? Perhaps the person transcending tribulation is very confident and is a talented person?" Chen Yu was curious and wanted to see what was going on, so he tried his best to arouse Martial Lord Bright Sword's interest. Martial Lord Bright Sword understood his thoughts and no longer refused. He chuckled and said, "Sigh, you brat, you clearly want to go and watch the show, yet you're still beating around the bush. Chen Yu pretended to be simple and honest and asked tentatively, Marshal Uncle Bright Sword, does that mean you agree? Let's go and take a look. It won't take long. Marshal Lord Bright Sword stroked his beard and nodded in agreement. Soon after, an old man and a young man flew over the sea of fire and rushed to the place where the tribulation cloud vortex appeared. In a cave deep in the canyon. Ji Tianqing had already circulated his energy and adjusted his breathing for a quarter of an hour, raising his cultivation and mental state to the peak. He was already prepared to welcome the heavenly tribulation. At this moment, the tribulation cloud vortex high in the sky had already formed. It had a radius of 100 miles and was as black as ink. Billions of lightning bolts flickered in the vortex and were about to condense into heavenly lightning that could destroy the heavens and earth. Ji Tianqing stopped circulating his energy and opened his eyes to look at Yun Yao at the entrance of the cave. He revealed a smile and warned, Yao Yao, you don't have to worry about me. I'll be fine. Quickly leave this canyon and hide further away. I'm afraid that the heavenly tribulation will affect you. Yun Yao looked at the tribulation cloud in the sky and felt a little nervous. She said with a heart full of worry, Tianqing, compared to my tribulation cloud, your tribulation cloud is condensing faster and has a wider range. Its power is definitely several times stronger. You must not be careless. And you must not have any accidents. Ji Tianqing understood her feelings, so he nodded and said, All right, I'll be careful. Don't worry. Don't help me, or else the consequences will be unimaginable. Yun Yao nodded with a solemn expression, then turned around and left. For safety's sake, she entered the reverse water divine sword and manipulated it to become the size of an embroidery needle. She quietly hid on a mountain peak 50 miles away. At such a close distance, she could watch Ji Tianqing transcend the tribulation and protect Ji Tianqing. If Ji Tianqing's life was in danger, she would save him even if she was killed by the heavenly lightning. She had just found a place to hide and manipulated the reverse water divine sword to hide in the rock layer when Ji Tianqing's heavenly tribulation began. Boom. Chapter 1768. The dazzling purple lightning tore through the sky like a sharp sword and pierced into the depths of the canyon. A sacred and mighty invisible pressure pressed down from the sky and shrouded the entire canyon. Yun Yao, Yi Ya, and the 5 bandits were all shrouded by the invisible force and their faces changed immediately. Oh my God! The first heavenly thunder is hundreds of feet long and has such a terrifying power? That kid hasn't reached the crossing calamity realm yet, has he? How can the heavenly thunder he triggered be comparable to a 4th stage crossing calamity realm expert? What a terrifying heavenly thunder. It actually made my mind tremble. This is incredible. It's too terrifying. Even when I was crossing the calamity realm, the heavenly thunder was not so powerful. Everyone was shocked. They stared at the heavenly thunder and couldn't wait to see the result. Ji Tianqing was still standing in the cave with a calm and composed posture, as if he didn't care about the heavenly thunder at all. In the next moment, there was a loud explosion that shook the sky. The hundreds of feet-long purple heavenly thunder blasted the ground apart and instantly destroyed the cave where Ji Tianqing was. The lightning engulfed his figure, and an endless amount of gravel and dust flew in all directions. The area within 100 miles became chaotic and was covered by the purple heavenly thunder. After a long time, the heavenly thunder and smoke dissipated and the canyon returned to calm. Everyone looked at the bottom of the canyon and saw that the ground was full of cracks and there was a huge black pit in the middle. Right above the deep pit, Ji Tianqing, in a white robe, was standing in the sky unscathed. No one knew how he blocked the heavenly thunder. No one knew that he not only blocked the heavenly thunder, but also absorbed most of its power. Yi Ya and the 5 bandits were dumbfounded and let out an incredulous roar. How is this possible? That kid actually blocked the heavenly thunder. Oh my God! That's the heavenly thunder that can only be triggered by a 4th or 5th stage crossing calamity realm expert. How did he block it? That kid is really a monster. He's not human at all. Only Yun Yao looked relieved. She secretly heaved a sigh of relief and felt gratified for Ji Tianqing. At this moment, the second heavenly thunder was condensed in the tribulation cloud vortex. Boom! Following an explosion that shook the 9 heavens, a dark blue pillar of lightning shot down from the tribulation cloud vortex. This bolt of heavenly lightning was 1,500 feet long, and its might was more than 2 times stronger than the first one. In the blink of an eye, the lightning beam struck the depths of the canyon and engulfed Ji Tianqing's figure. Yun Yao's heart was in her throat again. She looked worried and shouted in her heart, "Why is this happening? Why was Tianqing's heavenly tribulation so terrifying? Back when I was transcending my tribulation, the seventh bolt of lightning was less than 300 meters. His first heavenly thunder was 300 meters long, and the power of his second heavenly thunder was even more terrifying. Why is God so unfair to him?" Yi Ya and the 5 bandits held their breaths nervously, waiting for the bolt of lightning to strike. They were all praying in their hearts. They really wanted to see Ji Tianqing's tragic state of being killed by the heavenly thunder. At the same time, the 3 women, Bright Sword Martial Lord, and the others had already rushed to the vicinity of the canyon. Both groups of people saw the tribulation cloud vortex with a radius of 100 miles with their own eyes, as well as the terrifying heavenly thunder. Seeing this scene, Bright Sword Martial Lord and the white-haired old woman made a judgment almost at the same time. Such a huge tribulation cloud vortex and such a terrifying heavenly thunder. It must be a 5th-level tribulation transcendence realm expert transcending the tribulation here. The 2 groups of people rushed to the east and west sides of the canyon. They hid on the mountain peak and silently observed the situation in the canyon. Not long after, the rubble, smoke, and blue lightning arcs that covered the sky dissipated. Ji Tianqing's figure appeared. He was still standing in the air, unharmed. He even maintained his posture of lying on his back and hugging the sky with his arms outstretched. Looking at his movements, it was as if he was hugging the heavenly thunder that fell from the sky. He looked like he was enjoying it very much. No one noticed that the 3rd eye on his forehead flashed with a dark blue light and quickly closed. Everyone was dumbfounded. Their faces were full of horror. Especially Bright Sword Martial Lord, Chen Yu, and the 3 women. They were stunned on the spot, and their expressions were exceptionally wonderful. The white-haired old woman leaned on her walking stick and stared at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze. After a long silence, she let out a long sigh. Heavens! There are actually times when I misjudge. I originally thought that the person transcending the tribulation must have reached the 5th stage. I didn't expect it to be a 9th-level Essence Soul Realm kid. His first tribulation attracted such a terrifying heavenly thunder? What kind of genius is this? The middle-aged woman's face was also filled with shock. She nodded repeatedly and said, "Madam Jean, it seems that we didn't come here in vain. Such a young genius is definitely one that only appears once in 100 years." Even the young woman with a beautiful face and an ice-cold temperament stared at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze. Her handsome face was filled with amazement. What a powerful talent. He actually dares to treat the heavenly thunder as nothing. This person is so monstrous. He definitely isn't a nobody. The middle-aged woman glanced at her and joked with a smile. "Rong, that kid looks handsome and has extraordinary talent. He must be a 1 in a million talent. Only a genius like him is worthy of you. If he succeeds in transcending the tribulation, I will be your matchmaker. How about it?" A hint of shyness flashed through the young woman's eyes, but her expression was still calm. She said in a calm tone, "Ronger will follow your decision. But it's still too early to say this. It's not too late to wait until that young master succeeds in transcending the tribulation." Hearing her answer, the middle-aged woman smiled even more and joked, "Our Ronger has always been proud and arrogant. She doesn't put men of the same generation in her eyes and speaks bluntly to anyone. I didn't expect to meet that white-robed young master today. Finally, someone can enter Ronger's eyes. It's really not easy." The young woman's temperament was cold, indifferent, and arrogant. How could she stand such teasing from her master's wife? Her cheeks immediately flushed red. She turned her head away in embarrassment and pursed her lips tightly without speaking. Madame Jean glanced at the middle-aged woman and pretended to cough. She reminded, "Jeyu, Ronger is thin-skinned. Don't make fun of her. Let's watch that young master transcend the tribulation first. He's not simple. This heavenly tribulation is very likely to be unprecedented. It's our honor to be able to witness it with our own eyes." Hearing Madame Jin's solemn tone, the middle-aged woman also stopped smiling and looked at Ji Tianqing attentively. Ronger's embarrassment eased a lot. She also looked at Ji Tianqing with rapt attention, for fear of missing any details. On the other side, the faces of Martial Lord Bright Sword and Chen Yu became rather awkward and ugly. Chen Yu stared at Ji Tianqing with wide eyes and exclaimed in disbelief, "It's actually him? That bastard who rudely offended Martial Uncle? He Why did he come here and even transcend the tribulation here? Martial Lord Bright Sword also looked at Ji Tianqing with a complicated expression. His expression became rather strange. He was silent for a long time before he stroked his beard and said, "No wonder that kid is so arrogant and condescending. It turns out that he does have some ability. However, he's too young after all. He hasn't reached the tribulation realm yet. It's too early to be happy. How can the heavenly tribulation be so easy to pass? No matter how outstanding his talent is, if he can't pass the heavenly tribulation, he will be annihilated." Hearing Martial Lord Bright Sword's words, Chen Yu's mood immediately relaxed a lot. That inexplicable jealousy also dissipated a lot. He hurriedly cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Martial Uncle is right. The tribulation realm is the biggest hurdle in a martial artist's life. If you can cross it, you will soar to the 9th heaven. If you can't, you will vanish into thin air." Chapter 1769. Just as everyone was secretly discussing, another earth-shattering explosion erupted. Kaboom! A third bolt of heavenly lightning brewed in the tribulation cloud vortex. A 200-foot-long dark golden lightning bolt struck towards Ji Tianqing in the canyon. In that instant, golden light shone for hundreds of miles, illuminating the dark sky. The terrifying divine might of lightning suppressed the entire canyon, causing everyone's bodies to tremble, revealing a look of fear and dread. No one had expected that Ji Tianqing's third bolt of heavenly lightning would be so terrifying. Such a powerful heavenly lightning could only be triggered by a 6th-level tribulation transcendence realm expert. The hearts of Yun Yao, Madame Jean, and the others immediately rose to their throats as they broke out in cold sweat for Ji Tianqing. Yi Ya, the 5 bandits, Bright Sword Martial Lord, and the others held their breaths as they stared at the canyon. They saw that Ji Tianqing still did not take out his weapon to block. He looked up at the sky and waved his arms to cast a secret technique to welcome the descent of the golden heavenly lightning. Boom! Amidst the earth-shaking explosion, the dark golden pillar of lightning drowned him and struck the canyon. On the ground formed by golden rocks, a huge pit with a radius of 10 miles was immediately created, and countless rubble collapsed. Dozens of wide ravines split open in all directions, almost covering the entire canyon. Stone fragments and smoke rose into the air, covering the sky for 100 miles. After a long time, the canyon regained its clarity, and Ji Tianqing's figure appeared again. He was still in his snow-white robe, neat and tidy, and his expression was very calm. The golden heavenly lightning just now had been easily resolved by him without any effort. Seeing this scene, Yi Ya and the bandits were shocked to the point of numbness. When they came back to their senses, they cursed angrily. "Damn bastard, he actually blocked the heavenly lightning so easily again. What the hell? Even we might not be able to block such a terrifying heavenly lightning. How could he be safe and sound? It's too damn strange. Second leader, we can't wait any longer. If we allow that kid to successfully overcome the heavenly tribulation, I'm afraid it won't be easy to kill him." When Yi Ya heard the bandits' telepathic messages, he secretly clenched his fists as a murderous intent flashed in his eyes. However, after some consideration, he decided not to make a move for the time being. "Everyone, calm down and wait patiently for a moment. The first 3 heavenly thunders are the simplest, but the later ones will become more and more powerful." The criminals understood what he meant, so they suppressed their anxiety and worry and continued to observe the situation. At this moment, the tribulation cloud vortex high in the sky began to change. The tribulation clouds became even darker, and the wind became even more piercingly cold. The tribulation clouds' whirlpool spun even faster. Within the vortex, purple, blue, gold, and crimson lights flickered continuously. Not long after, the 4th bolt of lightning appeared. Boom! It was a 300-meter-long lightning pillar formed by 3 different colored lightning bolts, crimson heavenly flames, and white gales. This bolt of heavenly lightning carried the power to destroy the heavens and earth as it ruthlessly struck towards Ji Tianqing in the canyon. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the crowd who were secretly watching all changed drastically as they widened their eyes in shock. No! How could this be? It's only the 4th bolt of heavenly lightning. How could it be so powerful? Yun Yao's heart was burning with worry and her face was as pale as paper. She was extremely worried for Ji Tianqing. Madame Jean, Ronger, and the other 2 also revealed puzzled and shocked expressions as they exclaimed repeatedly. "Too terrifying. There are actually 3 types of heavenly lightning, as well as astral winds and heavenly flames. Just what level has that kid's talent reached? In my impression, such a terrifying heavenly lightning has never appeared in the past few hundred years. If the 4th bolt of heavenly lightning is already so terrifying, then how shocking would the heavenly lightning after that be? The expressions of Bright Sword Martial Lord and Chen Yu became increasingly unsightly. Especially Honorable Sword Martial Lord. Just now, he had solemnly vowed that Ji Tianqing was happy too early. However, the appearance of the 4th bolt of heavenly lightning proved that Ji Tianqing's talent far exceeded everyone's imagination. He only felt his old face burning and a hint of embarrassment flashed across his eyes. However, Chen Yu did not notice Bright Sword Martial Lord's expression. His eyes stared fixedly at Ji Tianqing, revealing a look of intense jealousy. Regardless of whether Ji Tianqing could block this bolt of heavenly lightning or not, for him to be able to trigger such a terrifying bolt of heavenly lightning, it proved that his talent was outstanding and that he was a peerless genius. This already made Chen Yu extremely jealous. In the next instant, the 5-colored heavenly lightning struck Ji Tianqing, drowning his figure. At the critical moment, he did not cast a spell to devour the power of lightning. After all, it was too dangerous. He chose to use the Kenshin battle robe, turning it into a pair of golden wings to protect himself. The destructive 5-colored divine lightning struck the golden wings, smashing him into the deep pit at the bottom of the valley. The charred pit on the ground instantly expanded by more than 2 times. The area within 100 miles of the pit was completely turned into ruins. Not even a millstone-sized stone could be found. Smoke, dust, and lightning covered the sky and lasted for a long time before dissipating. Everyone stuck their heads out and looked down, searching for Ji Tianqing's trace. Yi Ya and the bandits were all secretly looking forward to it and were excited as they asked each other through voice transmission. "How is it? Did you find that kid? Such a terrifying heavenly lightning. He definitely can't withstand it. He was most likely struck to death, right? If it were us, we would have been killed by that bolt of heavenly lightning. Even if that kid didn't die, he would definitely be seriously injured. Everyone quickly find his corpse. The second leader has instructed that if he's alive, we want to see him. If he's dead, we want to see his corpse." However, just as the bandits were discussing, a golden light flew out from the ruins. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing flapped his golden wings and flew into the sky safely, appearing in front of everyone's eyes. Immediately, everyone was in an uproar again, revealing complicated expressions. Some cursed angrily, some heaved a sigh of relief, and some exclaimed in surprise. Ji Tianqing had already sensed that something was amiss and found that there were several groups of powerhouses hiding around the valley. However, he didn't care and continued to focus on transcending the tribulation. He had already expected that the commotion caused by his tribulation would definitely alarm many powerhouses and attract countless people to watch. A moment later, the 5th bolt of heavenly lightning condensed in the vortex of tribulation clouds and struck down. Kaboom! Ji Tianqing used the same trick and used the golden rock wings again to protect himself. The 4,000 feet long 5-colored heavenly lightning was twice as powerful as before and instantly struck him. He was struck into the ruins again, smashing deep into the ground. The entire valley was destroyed by the lightning and turned into scorched ruins hundreds of miles wide. Thunder and wind surged. The 1,000-feet-long mountain ranges on both sides of the valley were also affected by the huge impact. They shook violently and huge cracks appeared. Chapter 1770. Although Yi Ya and the bandits all hoped that Ji Tianqing would be killed by the lightning. However, what happened before made them understand that Ji Tianqing was an incomparably monstrous genius. He would not die so easily. They stared at the ruins in the canyon, using their divine senses to search for Ji Tianqing's figure. Not long after, shattering sounds came from the ruins, and countless gravel was sent flying. A golden light flew out from the ruins and returned to the sky. Without a doubt, Ji Tianqing successfully blocked the 5th bolt of lightning, and he was still uninjured. His expression and aura of magic power didn't change much. However, the golden wings on his back dimmed a bit. Clearly, he used up quite a bit of power. Seeing that, Yi Ya and the bandits all revealed heavy disappointment. Yun Yao and Madame Jean were relieved of a heavy burden as they secretly breathed a sigh of relief. The middle-aged woman, Rong the Honorable Sword Martial Lord, and the others were almost numb from the shock. They didn't know what to say. At that moment, the the sixth bolt of lightning arrived as scheduled. Boom! The 500 feet long pillar of lightning was formed by the convergence of 6 colors. Not only were there 3 types of lightning, there was also sky fire, astral wind, and dark green poison. That poison was formed by the convergence of the power of the world. It was a rare poison of the world from ancient to modern times. When they saw that bolt of lightning appear, ordinary experts could only feel shock from its horrifying power. But Madame Jean and Yi Ya, the knowledgeable martial lords, widened their eyes in shock, as if they saw a ghost. Heavens! It's actually 6 types of lightning. This boy is definitely the #1 genius who shakes the ancients and dazzles the contemporaries. This is too unbelievable. I actually saw a miracle with my own eyes. In the past 1,000 years, there were only 2 people who could trigger 6 types of lightning. This boy is actually one of them. When the middle-aged woman and Ronger heard Madame Jin's exclamation, they immediately turned their heads to look at her, revealing puzzled gazes. However, Madame Jean stared straight at the bolt of lightning without any intention to explain. Boom! Following a huge explosion that shook the universe, the canyon with a circumference of 600 miles was destroyed on the spot, becoming a pile of rubble and ruins. In the middle of the ruins, an abyss with a circumference of 50 miles and a depth of 10 miles appeared. More than half of the dark golden mountain ranges on both sides of the valley collapsed as well, sending rocks flying everywhere. Such an earth-shattering power could be clearly heard from thousands of miles away. Many onlookers had no choice but to retreat again, keeping a distance of 100 miles from Ji Tianqing. When the smoke and dust dissipated, a dim golden light flew out from the abyss in the ruins. Shwa! After the golden light faded, the white-robed Ji Tianqing once again appeared in the sky. The golden wings on his back had already dimmed. It was obvious that he had used up all his energy. He had no choice but to retract his golden wings and take out the sword of burial of heaven. He stood above the ruins with his left hand behind his back and his right hand holding the sword of burial of heaven. He looked up at the tribulation cloud vortex. His handsome and resolute face revealed a strong sense of confidence. His deep and boundless eyes also revealed an incomparably resolute look. 100 miles away, Ronger's eyes were fixed on him. All her attention was attracted by his figure, unable to move away. Grandma Jean and the middle-aged woman also revealed gratified and amazed expressions. They were full of expectations and appreciation for Ji Tianqing. Grandma Jean raised her golden walking stick and pointed at the tribulation cloud vortex in the sky. She said excitedly, "It's already rare for this person to be able to survive 6 bolts of lightning unscathed. The fact that the tribulation cloud vortex hasn't dissipated means that he's going to attract the 7th bolt of lightning. A person who can attract 6 bolts of lightning is a once-in-a-century genius. A person who can attract the 7th and 8th bolts of lightning is a once-in-a-millennium genius." The middle-aged woman nodded slightly and said excitedly, "If the white-robed man can safely survive 6 bolts of lightning, he'll definitely be able to survive the 7th bolt of lightning. Even if he's severely injured, he'll be fine. There hasn't been such a genius in our vast divine nation for thousands of years. I've heard that there was a first disciple of God on Mount God Bestowment, who was highly valued by the Divine Master, and was praised as a once-in-a-millennium genius. It's a pity that the first disciple of God left Mount God Bestowment for some unknown reason. Alas!" Speaking of this, the middle-aged woman sighed regretfully, feeling rather regretful. Ronger didn't even turn her head. She stared at Ji Tianqing and said coldly, "That first disciple of God is probably just an undeserved reputation. Moreover, he betrayed the divine nation and has an inferior personality. This white-robed man, on the other hand, is handsome and has an outstanding temperament. He must be a noble and loyal genius." Grandma Jin's heart suddenly moved. She secretly transmitted a message to the middle-aged woman and said, "Jiayu, Ronger only saw the young man from afar, and she's so sure to protect him. I'm afraid that Ronger has fallen in love with him at first sight. If there's a chance, try to match the young man with Ronger. If they can get married, it'll be a great thing for the Divine Nation and the Green Dragon Association." The middle-aged woman bowed slightly and replied, "Grandma, don't worry. Jiayu knows what to do." At this moment, the vortex of tribulation clouds in the sky completed its transformation. What puzzled everyone was that the vortex of tribulation clouds, which was as dark as ink, actually lit up with 7-colored dazzling light. Tens of thousands of 7-colored dazzling lights condensed into 7 brilliant pillars of light, which hung down from the sky like a waterfall. Swoosh, Swoosh, swoosh. The seven-colored light, with a mysterious and invisible power, hit Ji Tianqing with a loud bang and drowned his figure. However, there was no earth-shattering sound, nor was there a scene of destruction. The seven-colored light burst open and turned into a huge ball of light, enveloping Ji Tianqing and floating above the ruins. The world was quiet, and the air was filled with a strange and mysterious atmosphere. Yi Ya, Martial Lord Handsome Sword, and many strong people in the Tribulation Realm were all dumbfounded, and their faces were full of astonishment. Everyone thought that the seventh bolt of heavenly lightning would definitely destroy the heavens and the earth, and its power would be unprecedented. But no one had expected that there would be no heavenly lightning, but 7 pillars of light. The most inconceivable thing was that the 7 pillars of light were so gentle that they didn't seem to have any lethality at all. After everyone came back to their senses, they immediately began to discuss with doubts. It's really too strange. What kind of heavenly tribulation is this? There's not even heavenly lightning. It's really strange. The 7th bolt of heavenly lightning should have destroyed the heavens and the earth. Why is there no movement at all? That kid is a freak, and the heavenly tribulation he triggered is also extremely strange. I've never heard of such a situation. I've read a lot of ancient books, but I've never heard of such a thing. Everyone was puzzled and felt that it was inconceivable. Only Grandma Jean frowned and pondered for a long time. Suddenly, she thought of something, and her expression changed drastically. Her eyes revealed a strong sense of horror. Chapter 1771. 7 Emotions Tribulation? Granny, what's the 7 Emotions Tribulation? The middle-aged woman and Ronger looked at Granny Jean in confusion. Granny Jean was quite excited. Her eyes were bright, and she explained in a serious tone. The so-called 7 Emotions Tribulation refers to the tribulation of 7 emotions and 6 desires. The ancients said that everyone in the world has 7 emotions and 6 desires. That's why there's love, hatred, greed, anger, and madness. If people don't have the 7 emotions and 6 desires, they'll be like plants, and those with high magic power will be saints. When saints are born and are destined to become gods, they'll have to accept the test of God and bear the tribulation of 7 emotions and 6 desires. Hearing Granny Jin's explanation, the middle-aged woman and Ronger were shocked and incredulous. Saints are born? Only those who are destined to become gods can trigger the tribulation of 7 emotions and 6 desires? No wonder I've never heard of the 7 emotions tribulation. Doesn't that mean that white-robed man is a saint and is destined to become a god? His talent and aptitude have actually reached such a terrifying level? Granny Jean nodded slightly and said with a serious expression, I've only seen information about the 7 emotions tribulation in an ancient book. I didn't expect to see this legendary heavenly tribulation with my own eyes today. It said that those who can trigger the 7 emotions tribulation are either world-shaking geniuses or the reincarnation of gods. I don't know if that white-robed man is the former or the latter. The middle-aged woman and Ronger were silent as they stared at the colorful light in the canyon. No matter which answer it was extremely shocking to them. On the other side, Yi Ya and the bandits were all anxious as they discussed telepathically. They didn't know what was going on. Someone suggested to sneak an attack on Ji Tianqing and kill him in one fell swoop. However, Yi Ya considered carefully and decided to continue observing. Time passed quietly. The dazzling 7-colored light in the canyon quietly floated and slowly rotated. Everyone stared at the light secretly, waiting for the result. After about half an hour, the originally calm colorful light suddenly spun faster. Swoosh! Swoosh! The dazzling light surged violently and released thousands of rays of light, illuminating the entire canyon. No one knew what was happening in the colorful light or what Ji Tianqing had experienced. Suddenly, a loud sound burst out and resounded through the sky. Boom! Following a deafening explosion, the rainbow light suddenly shattered, and a dazzling golden light flew out from it. It was that dazzling golden light that had split the entire ball of light into pieces. Countless rainbow-colored fragments scattered in all directions, falling on the ruins. The golden light flew back into the sky and stopped, revealing a white-robed figure. Shwa! Everyone took a closer look and saw that it was Ji Tianqing. His clothes were undamaged, but his long hair was a little messy. His face was pale as he panted, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Other than that, he didn't have any obvious injuries. The 7th bolt of heavenly thunder had already been neutralized by him. Seeing this scene, Everyone was inexplicably shocked. Madame Jean was the most amazed. Her eyes were full of admiration as she nodded repeatedly and said, "This king really didn't guess wrong. That boy is really a shocking genius and his character is also excellent. A genius who can withstand the test of the 7 emotions tribulation must have a firm will and a loyal heart. He has indeed successfully passed it." When Ronger heard this, she couldn't help but be puzzled. She secretly asked the middle-aged woman what this sentence meant. The middle-aged woman replied, "What Granny means is that the white-robed young master's character is very determined. Once he has made up his mind, he will never turn back and will have no regrets. At the same time, this person is very loyal. He has his own opinions and principles. He will never mix up worldly affairs and feelings. He has his own bottom line and integrity. All in all, Ronger, you guessed right. That white-robed young master's character and temperament are absolutely first class." Ronger's eyes suddenly brightened, and a touch of expectation appeared in her eyes. "You mean that if that young master has made up his mind about a girl, he will be loyal and never betray her?" "Of course," the middle-aged woman said in a firm tone. At the same time, Ji Tianxing was standing in the sky, silently adjusting his breath. The tribulation of 7 emotions and 6 desires just now seemed gentle and peaceful, without any danger. But in fact, it was a very dangerous test. He was sealed by the 7-colored dazzling light, and his divine soul was immersed in the dreamland. He experienced many realistic and illusory scenes, and encountered too many dangers and difficult choices. This test was related to the 7 emotions and 6 desires. There were greed, anger, infatuation, and also love, hate, and affection. He was determined and was not afraid of any test at all. He resolved the test and destroyed the dreamland all the way. But the most torturous test was about love and affection. Women of all shapes and sizes, including several peerless beauties, all appeared in the realistic illusion. Some of them were people he knew, some he didn't know, and some he loved deeply. He passed the first few tests smoothly. The second last test was about Yun Yao, and he passed it with difficulty. The last test, the Dreamland test, was about Ji Ku. He suffered serious internal injuries. His internal organs were broken, and his divine soul was severely damaged. His consciousness was muddled. Fortunately, he found a way to survive in a hopeless situation. He destroyed the dreamland and woke up. Then, he broke the seal of the 7-colored dazzling light and successfully escaped. Now that he had passed the 7 emotions and 6 desires tribulation, his mind and beliefs would be more determined. At the same time, this 7 emotions tribulation also allowed him to see his true self. He found the answer and was no longer confused. The tribulation cloud vortex high in the sky spun faster and began to change. The vortex, as black as ink, showed 2 colors, blazing white and red, intertwining and gathering. A terrifying hurricane blew between heaven and earth, and dense flames drifted in the air. In the canyon ruins within a few hundred miles, countless huge rocks were blown away by the strong wind and smashed into powder by the flames. Such a terrifying power made many onlookers tremble in fear. They hurriedly retreated further away. Not long after, the 8th bolt of lightning condensed in the tribulation cloud vortex. Boom! With a loud bang, the 9,000-foot-long bolt of lightning, which was covered in 5-colored brilliance, fell from the sky and struck Ji Tianxing. At first glance, there was nothing special about that bolt of lightning except for its shocking size. However, the heaven and earth within a 1,000-mile radius were suppressed by an invisible heavenly power. Everyone was afraid and couldn't help but kneel down and worship the heavens. How could an ordinary bolt of lightning bring with it such a terrifying suppressive power? Boom! With a loud bang, the 10,000-foot-tall 5-colored bolt of lightning struck Ji Tianxing and drowned his figure. Within a 500-mile radius, whether it was the ruins, the rocks, or the earth, were all smashed into powder. Chapter 1772. Yiya was blasted dozens of miles away by the might of the heavenly thunder and smashed into a ruin. However, he was a 7th-level tribulation transcendence realm powerhouse. He could still withstand the might of the heavenly thunder and was not injured. The 5 bandits under him, on the other hand, were in a miserable state. They had been blasted dozens of miles away by the heavenly thunder. All of them were covered in wounds and blood. Their injuries and sorry state made it seem as if they were the ones who had undergone their own tribulation. After everyone got up from the ruins, they took pills and circulated their energy to heal their injuries while crazily cursing Ji Tianxing. Damn little bastard. He actually attracted such a terrifying heavenly thunder. I'm afraid that only a powerhouse like the second master can attract such a powerful heavenly thunder. Little bastard. He caused us to be so miserable. He's dead for sure. He'll definitely be struck into dregs by the heavenly thunder. Yes. He hasn't reached the tribulation transcendence realm yet, but he attracted such a terrifying heavenly thunder. He's definitely going to die. If he can survive this heavenly thunder, I'll twist my head off and kick it like a ball. Granny Jean, the middle-aged woman, and Ronger were also forced back 20 miles by the might of the heavenly thunder. However, Granny Jean's magic power was strong, and she had predicted the terrifying power of the heavenly thunder in advance. She had used a defensive secret technique. Therefore, the three of them were not injured, but their hearts were incomparably shocked and could not calm down for a long time. He actually attracted the 8th heavenly thunder, as expected of a genius that only appears once in 1,000 years. Such a genius has not appeared in our vast divine kingdom for thousands of years. The power of this heavenly thunder is so terrifying. It's even more terrifying than my 6th level tribulation back then. I really don't know the name of that white-robed young master. If he succeeds today, he will definitely be famous and shock the entire Shenwu continent. The fate of Honorable Sword Martial Lord and Chen Yu was not much better than Yi Ya and the others. Chen Yu was caught off guard and was covered in blood from the lightning and fire. He was smashed into the ruins in a sorry state. Honorable Sword Martial Lord was powerful and was not injured by the heavenly thunder. However, he was still in a sorry state. The two of them flew back into the sky and discussed with gloomy expressions. Their hearts were filled with resentment. As for Yun Yao, who was hiding in the reverse water sword, she was not affected at all. No matter how strong the heavenly lightning was, it couldn't hurt the reverse water divine sword, much less her. However, the power of the 8th heavenly thunder was beyond her imagination, which made her extremely worried. Tianqing's 8th heavenly thunder is dozens of times more powerful than the heavenly thunder I summoned. Could it be that the heavens are treating him differently and punishing him like this because he controls the power of lightning? Yun Yao murmured to herself as she stared at the sky above the ruins, hoping that Ji Tianqing would be able to resolve the situation safely. A moment later, the lightning and fire that filled the air dissipated, and Ji Tianqing's figure gradually appeared. He opened his arms and stood in the sky, surrounded by a ball of half-white and half-red lightning fire. He looked up at the sky with his eyes closed. His pale face was filled with pain. Golden, purple and blue lightning kept drilling into his head, bombarding his sea of consciousness and divine soul. Blazing white wind also wrapped around his body, wantonly tearing at his skin and flesh. There were also mysterious crimson and light black flames that crazily drilled into his body from the soles of his feet, burning his meridians and bone marrow. Those mysterious flames even drilled into his chest and burned his internal organs. He was enduring a calamity and pain that no one could imagine, but he was sealed and unable to move. His white robe and inner shirt, as well as his long hair, were all burned to ashes by the lightning fire. Even though he was naked, he couldn't care less about shame. The extreme pain had already pushed him to the brink of collapse, and his divine soul was blurry. The skin all over his body was charred black, curling up and emitting spirals of black smoke. Astral winds and mysterious flames wrapped around his body, making it impossible for people to see his face and body. The surrounding experts all ignored the fact that he wasn't wearing any clothes, and all showed shocked expressions. Madame Jin's eyes were wide open, and light flashed in her pupils. She cried out involuntarily, "It's the great tribulation of wind and fire! Heavens! It's actually the great tribulation of wind and fire that only a 9th-level martial artist who becomes a martial saint will undergo." The middle-aged woman and Ronger were both stunned, and their faces were full of disbelief. They were so shocked that their bodies trembled. How can this be? Only a 9th-level martial artist who is about to become a martial saint will attract the great tribulation of wind and fire. How can that young master attract the great tribulation of wind and fire during his first tribulation? Why is the heavenly law so unfair? It's trying to kill him. The middle-aged woman's face was full of indignation and doubt. Her heart was also tightly clenched, and she sympathized with Ji Tianqing. Ronger's pretty face was also full of worry. She frowned and muttered, "The great tribulation of wind and fire is a test that a martial saint must undergo. The 9th heaven divine thunder attacks the divine soul, the astral winds from the outer heavens destroy the body, and the 9 secret flames burn the internal organs and blood marrow. This is the ultimate test of the heavenly tribulation. Since ancient times, countless experts had to experience the great tribulation of wind and fire. However, 95% of them were turned into ashes by the great tribulation of wind and fire. Only those who can successfully pass the great tribulation of wind and fire can transcend the mortal world and become a martial saint. I wonder if that young master can withstand it? If he passes the great tribulation of wind and fire, won't he become a martial saint immediately? Hundreds of miles away, Yun Yao, who was hiding in the reverse water divine sword, stared at Ji Tianqing with reddened eyes, and a layer of mist covered her eyes. She was the closest to Ji Tianqing, so she could see him the clearest. The great tribulation of wind and fire was corroding Ji Tianqing's body, burning him black and smoking, and he almost didn't look human anymore. He was enduring unimaginable pain, and his consciousness was blurred. He could collapse and disintegrate at any time and turn into ashes. Yun Yao's mind was connected with his, so she could feel his pain. Of course, she was extremely worried. She secretly clenched her fists, and her fingers pierced her skin. Dark red blood flowed out of her palms, but she didn't feel any pain. After pondering for a while, she resolutely controlled the reverse water divine sword, passing through the rubble and flying towards Ji Tianqing. The heavens are so unfair. They actually sent the great tribulation of wind and fire to Tianqing. I can't just sit by and do nothing. If Tianqing can't pass this tribulation, then I will bear the pain with him and live and die with him. Yun Yao had already made up her mind. She wanted to borrow the power of the reverse water divine sword to help Ji Tianqing pass this tribulation. However, the reverse water divine sword had only flown a few miles away when Ji Tianqing's weak soul consciousness sound transmission entered Yun Yao's mind. Yao Yao, don't come over. I can withstand it. Ji Tianqing's voice was weak and low, and it was also a little hoarse and intermittent. Obviously, while he was enduring the great tribulation of wind and fire, he took out a little bit of strength with great difficulty to send a sound transmission to Yun Yao. Yun Yao's body immediately stiffened, and she controlled the reverse water divine sword to stop. She hated the heavens for being unfair, for making Ji Tianqing suffer such a painful test and torture. She really wanted to help Ji Tianqing resolve the great tribulation of wind and fire, and save him from this tribulation. However, she remembered Ji Tianqing's warning and understood the consequences of interfering with the heavenly tribulation. Chapter 1773. Just as Yun Yao was feeling anxious, struggling, and hesitating, Ji Tianqing, who was above the ruins, finally changed. Originally, he had been burned to charcoal by the great tribulation of wind and fire. He curled up like a shrimp, his whole body emitting black smoke. But now, his body was emitting a dense sacred white light. The dense brilliance overflowed from his mouth, nose, and eyes. It lit up from the wounds all over his body and quickly enveloped his entire body. This mysterious white light was softer and more sacred than the blazing white of the astral wind. It seemed to contain incredible power. The astral wind, heavenly lightning, and 9 secret fire were unable to get close to the mysterious white light and were quickly broken down and devoured. In just 100 breaths of time, the astral wind, secret fire, and heavenly lightning that enveloped Ji Tianqing all disappeared. He was wrapped in the dense sacred white light, quietly floating in the sky. His physical body was rapidly healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. His charred skin and flesh were quickly regenerating. The new flesh and skin were sparkling and translucent like jade, as pure as a baby, and revealed traces of sacred golden light. Even on his head, new black hair was quickly growing. It was jet black, shiny, and extremely flexible. After another quarter of an hour, he was wrapped in the mysterious white light, and his body was reborn. The great tribulation of wind and fire had finally been resolved. He regained his freedom of movement, slowly stretched his body, and gradually withdrew the sacred white light on the surface of his body. Only then did he realize that his perfect body was exposed to everyone without any concealment. He quickly took out a set of clothes from his interspatial ring and quickly changed them. In the blink of an eye, he returned to his former appearance, becoming a sacred and noble young master in fluttering white clothes. Not far away, Yun Yao saw him turn the situation around with her own eyes. She immediately smiled through her tears, wiped away the tears in her eyes, and revealed a gratified smile. In the sky further away, several groups of experts who were secretly watching were all dumbfounded on the spot. Yi Ya and a few miserable bandits seemed to have been petrified. They were shocked and angry. Bright Sword Martial Lord and Chen Yu also looked at Ji Tianqing in a daze, their eyes filled with shock. After a long while, Chen Yu finally came back to his senses and muttered with a sour tone, "Damn brat, he actually turned the danger into safety and passed through the 8th heavenly lightning." However, how could his body be so perfect? Even a man's assets are so strong. It was clear that Ji Tianqing's body had been tempered thousands of times, and had already reached an extremely perfect state, making Chen Yu very jealous. Especially his majestic. It made Chen Yu feel even more ashamed of his inferiority, and a strong sense of inferiority arose in his heart. Chen Yu was well aware that if it were any other woman, they would be attracted to Ji Tianqing and not choose him. When the Honorable Sword Martial Lord heard Chen Yu's mutterings, a hint of anger flashed across his already gloomy old face. "Chen Yu, you are a martial artist. How can you have such filthy thoughts like a mortal? Our Yi-Gen sex inherited mental cultivation method can only be cultivated to the pinnacle by a virgin boy. If you want to reach the peak of martial arts, it's best to dispel those thoughts of the 7 emotions and 6 desires and wholeheartedly indulge in martial arts." After being reprimanded, Chen Yu immediately lowered his head in dejection and no longer spoke. Granny Jean, Ronger and the other two were too far away from Ji Tianqing. They could only vaguely see his body and did not see anything that was inappropriate to look at. But even so, Ronger's face still turned red and her heart skipped a beat. Ji Tianqing's perfect body only appeared for a short 2 breaths. Although she could only vaguely see his figure, she still admired it and ripples appeared in her heart. At this moment, the middle-aged woman's expression changed and she let out a cry of surprise. "Look, that tribulation cloud vortex. It hasn't dissipated yet." Granny Jean and Ronger were both startled awake and immediately looked up at the sky. Sure enough, they saw that the tribulation cloud vortex was still there. Moreover, the tribulation cloud vortex was still slowly spinning, gradually turning blood red. Seeing this scene, Granny Jean was so excited that her body trembled and her entire old face twitched. The fact that the tribulation cloud hasn't dissipated means that there's still a 9th bolt of lightning. This white-robed young master can actually attract 9 bolts of lightning? According to historical records, in the tens of thousands of years since ancient times, only one person has attracted 9 bolts of lightning and successfully passed through them. Today, there's actually a second person who has attracted 9 bolts of lightning. It's really an honor for us to be able to witness it with our own eyes. The middle-aged woman was stunned and asked excitedly, "Granny, the only person you're talking about who attracted 9 bolts of lightning, is it Kenshin from 1,000 years ago?" "Yes." Granny Jean nodded solemnly, her eyes filled with deep reverence. Kenshin was the most dazzling genius in the past 30,000 years. In the end, he ascended to the upper realm and even became the divine king who controlled the galaxy. Only a divine person like him, who shocked the past and present, could attract 9 bolts of lightning and cause the heavenly Tao to fear him. I didn't expect that in just a short 1,000 years, a second divine person would appear in the world. As she spoke, Granny Jean looked at Ji Tianqing with a solemn expression and whispered, "Jiu Ronger, watch carefully. You must remember the details of that young master's tribulation. Today, to be able to watch a divine person go through tribulation is the blessing of 3 lifetimes. If you can comprehend even a little bit from it, it'll be enough for you to enjoy for a lifetime." Ronger nodded repeatedly, her pretty face solemn, her eyes filled with anticipation and reverence. The middle-aged woman frowned and asked in a low voice, "Granny, that white-robed young master is indeed a peerless genius, but your evaluation of him is so high, isn't it a little?" Madame Jean turned her head and glanced at her. With a serious expression she said, "Jiu, do you know that Divine Lord Taihao, Martial God Tianju, and Martial God Luo Shui only attracted 8 heavenly tribulations? In tens of thousands of years, Kenshin, the only one who could attract 9 bolts of lightning, became the supreme divine king. Now, this young master is also going to attract 9 bolts of lightning. Do you think his future achievements will be better than the 3 martial gods?" "Ah." The middle-aged woman was speechless and couldn't refute. But she thought for a moment and continued, "Granny, of course I know that young master is a peerless genius and will definitely reach the martial god realm in the future. But he's too young and hasn't stepped into the tribulation realm. It's hard to say whether he can go through the 9th bolt of lightning. Don't you think you're flattering him by calling him a saint and a divine person now?" Granny Jean stared at the middle-aged woman and suddenly smiled. She asked, Jeyu, you've cultivated for more than 900 years and are now at the 6th level of the tribulation realm, right? The middle-aged woman didn't understand and could only nod. Yes. Chapter 1774. Granny Jin's words made the middle-aged woman's face filled with embarrassment. She instinctively did not believe these words and could not accept such an evaluation. However, Granny Jin had only passed the Great Tribulation of Wind and Fire 80 years ago and reached the martial sage realm. She had no way to question or refute the judgment of a martial sage expert. After a moment of silence, she sighed with a complicated expression and cupped her hands. Granny, Jeyu understands. Granny Jin did not say anything else. She turned her head to look at Ji Tianqing in the distance and said leisurely, in this world, there are always a few geniuses who are as dazzling as the sun and moon, illuminating the past and present. Geniuses of that level are not something you and I can imagine. The middle-aged woman nodded silently. Rong'er also nodded repeatedly. Her eyes looking at Ji Tianqing became even brighter. At the same time, the tribulation cloud vortex high in the sky finally turned blood red. Boom! Following the sound of thunder that resounded through the heavens and earth, a blood-red lightning bolt that was 10,000 feet long descended from the sky and struck towards Ji Tianqing. That blood-red lightning bolt was as mighty as a giant dragon, but it also revealed a mysterious and strange aura. In just an instant, the blood-red lightning bolt struck Ji Tianqing and enveloped his figure. There was no scene of the heavens collapsing and the earth cracking. The ruins were also safe and sound and were not struck by lightning. That 10,000 feet long blood-red lightning bolt had actually all poured into Ji Tianqing's body, causing his body to freeze in mid-air as if he had been petrified. He was like a stone statue, standing proudly and upright in the sky, not moving at all. Such a strange scene caused Yi Ya, the bandits, Bright Sword Martial Lord, and Chen Yu to reveal looks of astonishment. How is this possible? That brat attracted the 9th bolt of lightning. Shouldn't it destroy the heavens and earth? It's too damn strange. When this bolt of lightning struck down, it didn't even break a rock. When the heavenly lightning struck down, that terrifying heavenly might was like the end of the world. I didn't expect it to be a bluff. The middle-aged woman and Rong'er also revealed a look of deep doubt. They could not understand what was going on. However, with their previous experience, both of them had a premonition that there was definitely a big problem with the seemingly harmless heavenly lightning. Therefore, both of them turned to look at Madame Jean, hoping to get an answer. Madame Jean frowned and pondered for a moment. Then she said, this 9th thunderbolt is no ordinary thunderbolt. It should be the legendary Inner Demon Tribulation. The so-called Inner Demon Tribulation is the heavenly Tao's final test for unparalleled geniuses. The middle-aged woman and Rong'er listened carefully to Granny Jin's explanation. They felt that it was incredible and eye-opening. At the same time, 50 miles away from Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, who was hiding in the reverse water divine sword, was also full of worry. She stared at Ji Tianqing and thought to herself, I only triggered 8 bolts of heavenly thunder, but Tianqing managed to trigger 9 bolts of heavenly thunder, just like Kenshin back then. Now, he is also facing the Inner Demon Tribulation. I wonder if his Inner Demon Tribulation is the same as mine. Back then, I saw the demon race in the Inner Demon Tribulation and obtained many of Goddess Yao Guang's memories. Tianqing's Inner Demon Tribulation definitely can't avoid the demon race in Kenshin, right? Thinking of this, she secretly prayed in her heart, hoping that Ji Tianqing could pass it smoothly. Ji Tianqing's physical body was wrapped in a ball of bloody light, suspended motionlessly in the sky. And his soul had already fallen into the Inner Demon Tribulation. In the depths of his soul, a very realistic scene emerged, sinking him into it and unable to extricate himself. On a grayish-brown wasteland, the flames of war were burning, and smoke signals were drifting into the sky. The endless demon race army formed a boundless black sea. Under the leadership of numerous giant demons, they were bravely charging forward. Many human soldiers, as well as the armies and martial artists of various races, were resisting the demon race army's rampage with hearts full of indignation and fear. The entire wasteland was covered in blood and fire. Heaven and earth were filled with shouts, screams, and the rumbling sounds of magic spells colliding. The soldiers and martial artists of various races were constantly killed by the ferocious demon race, falling into pools of blood in pieces. Soldiers and martial artists fell down one after another, like wheat being cut down. On this wasteland battlefield, life was inferior to even grass, lowly to the extreme. Before long, the demon race army defeated the soldiers of various races. Like a black tide, they surged to the end of the wasteland, drowning that majestic city. In the ancient city, millions of people were brutally slaughtered, without any strength to resist. Flames of war rose in the city, blood flowed like rivers, and bones were strewn all over the ground. It was like purgatory on earth. Ji Tianqing was dressed in a white robe dyed red with blood. Holding the pitch-black and ice-cold burial of heaven, he was standing high in the sky covered with gray clouds, fighting with several giant demons. The bodies of those giant demons were as majestic as mountains. With a raise of their hands, they could release magic spells that could destroy heaven and earth. Ji Tianqing was bathed in blood, fighting fiercely. The golden wings on his back had already dimmed. His face was covered in blood, his magic power was empty, and he could barely hold on. Deep grief and helplessness filled his heart, causing him to roar at the sky. The few trolls laughed hideously and cursed in a mocking manner. Ji Tianqing, how can a little bastard like you stop the advance of my race? A mantis trying to stop a chariot. You overestimate yourself. Little worm, kneel down and beg for surrender now. Perhaps the ancestor will give you a dignified death. Anger made Ji Tianqing crazy. He waved his divine sword recklessly, attacking those giant demons. However, the giant demons waved their huge copper hammers, long sabers, and other weapons, sending him flying back in 2 or 3 moves. His right arm was chopped off, and he fell into the ruins, covered in blood, on the verge of death. However, he was still unyielding. Holding the sword of burial of heaven in his left hand, he stood up shakily. At this moment, those giant demons surrounded him, but they were not in a hurry to attack. A series of earth-shattering noises gradually came from afar. The giant demons looked at the wasteland, waiting in awe. Ji Tianqing also looked up at the wasteland. He saw a majestic figure that was 3,000 feet tall striding over. That pitch-black figure stood tall, as if it was a god from the antiquity age. Its entire body was shrouded in purple demonic light, and its body was extremely sturdy. It also had 6 scarlet eyes, 6 thick arms, and 8 broad wings. Ji Tianqing recognized it at a glance. It was the ancestor fiend celestial. Bam, bam, bam. As the ancestor fiend celestial's heavy footsteps sounded, the entire wasteland trembled. After a while, it stopped in front of Ji Tianqing. 6 huge scarlet eyes stared down at Ji Tianqing from above. After sizing him up for a while, the ancestor fiend celestial sneered and said in a mocking tone, "Kenshin, you really disappoint me. The 3 martial gods are no different from ants in my eyes. I originally thought that you, who once controlled the galaxy and ruled thousands of gods, as the divine king of the 9 heavens, would be able to exchange a few moves with me.